Hello everybody, Omni Sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as an Original Vampire with a Mark of CAIN? Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Henrik's eyes fluttered open slowly, consciousness returning as the remnants of his mother's sleeping spell finally faded. The cave's familiar stone walls came into focus, illuminated by flickering torchlight that cast dancing shadows across the rough surfaces. His first awareness was of Rebecca's face hovering above him, concern etched in features that somehow seemed both familiar and subtly changed. "Sister," he mumbled, pushing himself up. The movement felt strange, as if his body had forgotten the weight of itself during his enchanted sleep. "What's happened?" The last thing I remember was, his hand went to his arm where the wolf had scratched him, but the wound was gone, leaving only smooth skin behind. Then his gaze fell on the still form lying in the corner of the cave. Even in the shadows, he recognized the dress. The golden hair spread across the stone floor like a funeral shroud. "Mother?" His voice cracked as he stumbled to his feet. "Mother!" As if summoned by his cry. The cave entrance darkened with approaching figures. Valley entered first, his clothes torn and soaked with blood, his eyes gleaming in the torchlight. Behind him came the others, Michael, Elijah, Klaus, Cole, and Finn, all looking battle-worn but unharmed. But it was the woman supported between Valley and Klaus that drew Henrik's attention. Tadia, pale and disoriented, blood staining her dress. "I did," Valley answered his brother's unspoken question, his voice steady despite his bloodied appearance. "I killed our mother." Henrik stared at his second eldest brother, his small frame trembling. "Why?" The question hung in the air, met only with silence. Valley stood still, his eyes fixed on his youngest brother, saying nothing. The silence seemed to break something in Henrik. "Why aren't you answering me?" he demanded, his voice rising. "She was right about you, wasn't she? Everything she told me." The other siblings shifted uncomfortably, but remained quiet. They didn't know how to bridge this gap, how to explain the complexity of what had happened. Valley, however, remained motionless, waiting. "She told me you were born wrong," Henrik continued, tears streaming down his face. "That you had darkness in you from the start. That the mark wasn't just a birthmark. It was a warning, a sign that you were something evil." His voice grew louder with each accusation, months of their mother's poisonous whispers pouring out. "She said you enjoyed hurting people, that you weren't really my brother at all, but something wearing his skin. That one day you'd turn on us all." Rebecca tried to reach for him, but Henrik pulled away. "She said you were death itself, that you destroy everything you touched, and now you've killed her. You've proved her right." The accusations echoed through the cave, each one a testament to how deeply Esther had planted her seeds of doubt and fear. Valley remained silent through it all, his eyes never leaving Henrik's face, letting his brother release every bit of poison their mother had fed him. "You're right," he said finally, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the silence. "Mother did tell you those things." And looking at me now, he gestured to his blood-stained form, his otherworldly eyes. "You might think she was right about everything." He knelt down, bringing himself to Henrik's level, though maintaining enough distance not to frighten him further. "But ask yourself this, little brother. If I truly was what she claimed, why did I save you from the wolves? Why have I protected this family time and time again?" His voice remained cold, matter of fact, but there was an underlying gentleness meant for Henrik's young ears. Mother saw what she wanted to see. She feared what she couldn't control. And yes, I killed her, not because I'm a monster, but because she would have destroyed us all to satisfy her fear. He glanced at their tired siblings, at Tadia's bloodied form. Even tonight, her closest friend tried to finish what she started. She would have killed us all, in the future possibly even you, because of what she herself made for you. Henrik, that's the truth Mother never told you. You don't have to forgive me, Valley added softly. You don't even have to believe me. But know this, everything I've done, every life I've taken, has been to protect this family, including you. Which in essence it was, For even though he gained extreme pleasure from it, his killings were focused primarily on those who would threaten him and his family in any capacity. Henrik stared at his brother, conflict clear on his young face. The cave fell silent save for Tadia's soft gasps as her body still needed to recover, only having drunk enough from Iana to transition. The truth hung heavy in the air, not just about their mother's death, but about everything that had led to this moment. Did she? Henrik's voice wavered. Did she really try to kill you? Many times, Vala confirmed, still kneeling at Henrik's level. Do you remember the illnesses the accidents? They weren't natural. They were her attempts to be rid of what she feared. And Henrik did remember them. He was only 10 winters old, having been born after most of Vala's accidents had already occurred. But even in his short life, he'd witnessed enough to plant seeds of doubt that could now bear fruit. He remembered the winter 2 years ago when Valley had fallen deathly ill after drinking from a cup their mother had personally prepared. Valley then, ever the optimist, still then yearning for his mother's love drinking it, just to make her happy, no matter how much deep down he knew it was futile. The mark had pulsed crimson through the night, and by morning, Valley had recovered, though others would have surely died. Then there was the incident with the hunting trap that had inexplicably appeared in Vala's path, or the time his horse had gone mysteriously wild during a ride, kicking him in the chest into a rock. It broke nearly all his ribs, for the black steed is a horse that, unknown to all, was more of a familiar than anything else to Valley, having become stronger with every kill he aided his master in. They were, in essence, small things that could be explained away, but now carried darker meaning. Valley watched these memories play across his youngest brother's face. Henrik stared at his second, eldest brother, conflict clear in his young features. The cave fell silent save for Tadia's soft, tired gasps. The truth hung heavy in the air, not just about their mother's death, but about everything that had led to this moment. But why didn't you tell anyone? Henrik asked, his anger giving way to confusion. Who would have believed me? Vala's eyes flickered briefly to Michael. A child claiming his mother wanted him dead? Even father only learned the truth today. Cole stepped forward, his usual mischievous demeanor subdued. I saw it, he admitted, drawing everyone's attention. The magic in those potions she gave you. I was studying her grimoires, learning what I could, and I recognized some of the ingredients. But I was too much of a coward to speak up. We all saw pieces of it, Elijah added quietly, guilt heavy in his voice. The way she would tense when you entered a room, how her eyes would track your movements. We chose not to see the truth, because it was easier to believe nothing was wrong. Finn continued, his voice thick with emotion, to trust that a mother could never. He trailed off, unable to finish. Even he, in his resentment for his brother's cruelty, could never bring himself to wish death upon him. Niklaus moved closer to Henrik, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. I understood something was wrong, but even I didn't grasp the full extent of it. Mother was skilled at hiding her true nature. She made us complicit in our silence, Rebecca whispered, tears streaming down her face. All those times Valley was ill, and she would insist on being the only one to tend to him. Michael's voice cut through the confessions, heavy with regret. I was blind. Willfully blind. A father's duty is to protect his children, and I failed in that most sacred task. Tadia, still adjusting to her transformation, spoke up from where she sat supported by the cave wall. I knew her not for long, but since I joined with Valley, whenever I saw her, I saw fear of what she couldn't control, what she couldn't understand. I saw it in her eyes whenever she looked at him, even before. She gestured to her new state, all of this. Henrik looked around at his siblings, seeing the truth written on their faces. The weight of their collective guilt, their shared blindness, filled the cave like a physical presence. The weight of revelations seemed to physically exhaust Henrik, his small frame swaying as emotional and physical fatigue took their toll. Rebecca noticed immediately, her maternal instincts kicking in. That's enough for tonight, she said softly, guiding Henrik back to his sleeping furs. Rest now, little brother. There will be time for more truths tomorrow. She began humming an old Norse lullaby, one their mother used to sing, though that thought now carried a bitter edge. As Henrik's eyes grew heavy, the rest of his siblings starting to scatter, Valley turned to Tadia. Without a word, he lifted her into his arms, her newly transformed body still adjusting to immortality. His eyes met Michael's briefly, a silent communication passing between them. "We need to talk," he said to Tadia, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Then, to the others, addressing them before they fully left, "We'll return before dawn." Without waiting for anyone's reply, they left. They vanished into the night, moving with supernatural speed until they reached a secluded clearing far from the cave, far from prying eyes and enhanced hearing. Here, surrounded by ancient pines and beneath the winter stars, they could finally be alone with their new reality. In the clearing, moonlight filtering through the pine branches, Valley gently set Tadia down. His black eyes met hers with intensity. He, the moment they became vampires, already thought about the dangers of compulsions and sire bonds towards Tadia. He did not wish to have the same fate Niklaus had with Aurora de Martel in the original timeline, nor to have a relationship formed upon lies by sire bond. So, he simply decided he wouldn't let it happen to her. "There's something I need to do first, before we can speak, though I need to ask you to trust me," he said softly, his pupils dilating as he accessed his newfound power. His voice took on an otherworldly resonance as he spoke, the mark on his arm pulsing faintly. "You will never be compelled by anyone but me. You will remember every compulsion ever used on you. You will never form a sire bond. Not with me, not with anyone. Your mind and will remain your own, save when compelled by me." The compulsion settled into place, a fundamental alteration to her vampiric nature before it could fully take root. Tadia blinked, processing the strange sensation of the command binding itself to her very being. "What was that?" she asked, touching her temple as if she could physically feel the changes. "Protection," Valley replied simply. "Now we can talk freely." "What protection?" Tadia's voice carried a familiar edge of exasperation as she crossed her arms, fixing him with a look that had cowed lesser men. "You can't just do whatever that was and expect me to accept it without explanation, Valley." Her newly heightened senses made her even more aware of his tendency to act unilaterally, to make decisions that affected others without consulting them. It was so quintessentially him. To do whatever he deemed necessary and expect everyone to fall in line, to trust in his judgment without question. "After everything that's happened tonight," she continued, her voice softening slightly but maintaining its steel, "after what your mother and Ayana tried to do, don't you think I deserve to understand what you just did to me?" The moonlight caught the dried blood on her dress, a stark reminder of how others' decisions had already affected her fate tonight. Her transformation had been her choice, yes, but this was different. She wanted to know him even better, since now they had eternity, and she did not wish to even miss a piece of what makes him him. He was her everything. Her village people have abandoned her when she fell in love with him, her aunt as well, though to no true surprise, since she never was good to her mother in the first place, since she always envied her sister, with that envy after Tadia's mother's death having transferred to her. Valley, despite his cruel and sadistic nature, truly loved her, and because of that love, she loved him in her own words 1,000 times more. Valis studied her for a moment, appreciating how even as a vampire, even covered in dried blood and having just escaped death, she maintained that fierce spirit that had first drawn him to her. Her demand for explanations was so quintessentially Tadia, never cowering, never simply accepting his decisions without understanding them. "What I just did," he began, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face, "was ensuring your mind remains your own. Our new nature, it comes with abilities. We can compel others, bend their will to ours, make them forget things, control them. And there's something called a sire bond that can form between the one who turned someone and the one turned." He paused, letting her process this information. "I made sure no one but me could ever compel you, and that you'll always remember if I do. I also prevented any sire bond from forming, even with me. Your feelings, your choices, will always be purely your own." "And why only you?" she asked. her voice carrying that familiar mix of challenge and affection. Why leave yourself that power over me? Because there may come times when I need to protect you from things you don't yet understand, he replied honestly. But I swear to you, Tadia, I will never use it to change who you are or what your feelings are towards me without your own permission. The moonlight filtered through the pine branches above them, casting dappled shadows across her face as she considered his words. This was the man she had chosen, the one who could kill without mercy yet show such care in protecting her autonomy, who could be both monster and protector in the same breath. My people abandoned me when I chose you, she said softly, reaching up to touch his face. My aunt, my village, they all turned their backs on me. But you've given me eternity. Tadia's fingers traced the lines of his face with an almost reverent intensity, her newly heightened senses making her even more aware of every detail that made him uniquely him. The dried blood on his clothes, rather than repulsing her, only made her heart race with a dark sort of pleasure. This was her valley, powerful enough to make even spirits flee. Eternity, she whispered, her eyes gleaming with something that went beyond mere affection. An endless time where no one can take you from me. Her grip on his face tightened slightly, possessively. Where those who try will learn why that's a mistake. Valen noticed the shift in her demeanor, how her natural darkness, the very thing that had first drawn him to her, was being amplified by her transformation. The way her eyes tracked his every movement, how she positioned herself to always maintain physical contact, spoke of an obsession that matched his own darkness perfectly. At her demeanor, he remembered something that was peculiar and was what actually drove him to create his compulsion. A compulsion unbreakable by anyone lesser than him when it comes to the might of the soul. Tadia's mind reached out to him and saw his memories. Well, his most forefront memory, really his current favorite one, that he had constantly on loop, even now. You enjoyed watching me kill her, didn't you? He asked softly, referring to Esther. Even before your transformation, I saw it in your soul. A smile played across Tadia's lips, beautiful and terrible all at once. She tried to take you from me. She replied simply, as if that explained and justified everything. Just like Ayana tried. Just like anyone who threatens our bond deserves. Their eyes met in the moonlight, centuries of potential stretching before them. Tadia's heightened senses made every touch electric, every breath significant. The dried blood on their clothes, the lingering scent of death. It should have repulsed her, but it only drew her closer to him. Mine, she whispered against his skin, her possessive nature fully awakened by her transformation. Her fingers traced the mark on his arm, feeling its power pulse beneath her touch. Tadia watched, entranced, as Vala's eyes transformed in desire and lust, the darkness spreading until they were bottomless pools of black, while dark veins spiderwebbed across his face. Where others might have seen a monster, she saw only beauty. Perfect, you are absolutely perfect, she breathed, her own vampire features emerging in response. With supernatural strength, she pressed forward, claiming his lips in a fierce kiss that sent them both crashing against an ancient pine. The tree groaned under the impact, bark splintering around them. The ancient pine cracked under their supernatural strength as they lost themselves in each other. Tadia's nails raked across his back, drawing blood that healed instantly. Her vampire features were fully emerged now, matching his demonic appearance, a perfect union of darkness. They feared this, she gasped between fierce kisses. They feared what we could become together. Her possessive nature fully awakened. She marked him as hers in every way she could, their immortal bodies healing each touch, each bite, each claim. The mark pulsed softly with crimson energy, casting their shadows in a gentle blood-red light across the forest floor. Their heightened senses continuing to make every touch electric, every moment eternal. Vala's own possessive nature emerging as his hands gripped her with bruising force that healed instantly. He growled against her throat, his black eyes gleaming with great intensity. The mark flared brighter as his own darkness, rose to match hers. Anyone who tries to separate us will learn why you don't separate the devil and his queen. Their passion consumed them through the night, two immortal beings claiming each other completely. When dawn finally was close, the sun soon approaching, they lay together on the forest floor, surrounded by splintered trees and scattered leaves, deciding to soon after a bit of leave before the rays of the sun graced the earth once more. Tadia traced the mark on his arm once more, her eyes filled with dark satisfaction. "Let them fear us," she whispered. "Let them run. We have eternity to show them why they should." Vala smiled, pulling her closer. "And our eternity," he replied, "is just the beginning." The morning sun cast its rays across the Viking village, no longer a threat to the Mikaelson family. Each of them now wore a lapis lazuli ring, crafted by Iona under Vala's watchful black eyes. After their first confrontation, the witch had learned the folly of attempting deception, especially when Vali had returned, demanding she create rings for himself and Klaus without any hidden spells. Her fear of him had ensured her compliance. While Elijah and Finn had spread word through the village of their mother's passing, a swift illness, they claimed, Vali and Klaus had ventured into the woods under the pretense of hunting. Though blood was now their primary sustenance, they maintained appearances by bringing game to the village. It helped avoid unwanted questions, and besides, they found they still enjoyed the taste of normal food, even if it no longer sustained them. Niklaus stood at the edge of the forest clearing. Their morning hunt concluded, his new ring glinting in the sunlight as he twisted it absently around his finger. His enhanced senses could pick up the scent of the werewolf camp in the distance, carried on the wind. Somewhere among them was the man whose blood ran through his veins, the coward who had sired him but never claimed him. Vali adjusted the large white deer slung across his shoulder, a rare prize that would have normally brought satisfaction to their hunt. At Klaus's words, however, he sighed heavily and lowered the carcass to the ground. The pristine white fur was marred with blood where their enhanced strength had snapped its neck cleanly. "Going somewhere, brother?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The mark on his arm pulsed faintly, as if sensing his brother's darker intentions. Klaus's smile grew sharp, predatory, but his eyes held nothing but revulsion. "I think it's time I paid a visit to the coward who sired me," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The man who couldn't even face father's wrath, who left his seed to grow under another man's care." Vala moved to stand beside his brother, his eyes scanning the distant tree-line where the werewolf camp lay as the white deer's blood soaked into the frost-covered ground behind them, staining the snow crimson. "Most only saw father's cruelty," Klaus continued, his fingers flexing at his sides. "They never understood the purpose behind it, the strength he was trying to forge in us. And this wolf," he practically spat the word, "he ran from even that. Left his own blood to face it alone." "And what do you plan to do when you find him?" Vali asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I want him to see what his seed has become, not because of him, but in spite of him. I want him to know that it was Michael, the man he feared, who truly made me his son." His voice dropped lower, darker. "And then I want him to die knowing his cowardice meant nothing in the end." Vala studied his brother's profile, noting how their transformation had brought out something darker in Klaus. Not the gentle soul their mother had tried to preserve, nor the mindless beast she had feared, but something more complex. A darkness tempered by understanding. He reasoned it was perhaps because the necklace no longer suppressed any darker impulses. Their mother's magic had done more than just hide Klaus's true nature. It had muted parts of who he truly was. The white deer lay forgotten behind them as they moved through the forest with supernatural grace. Their enhanced senses picked up every detail of the werewolf camp long before it came into view. The crackling of fires, heartbeats, conversations carried on the wind. "They haven't transformed back long," Klaus noted, catching the lingering scent of wolf in the air. The full moon had passed just days ago, leaving them weakened from their change. "Perfect timing, wouldn't you say?" Vala's eyes gleamed with dark amusement, almost as if fate arranged it. He paused, catching a particular scent that made Klaus stiffen beside him. "That one," His blood smells similar to yours." Through the trees, they could see a man sitting by one of the fires, strong-built, with features Klaus had sometimes caught glimpses of in his own reflection. The scar across his torso, visible even through his tunic, was a reminder of his encounter with Valley during the last full moon. The mighty black wolf, leader of the pack, now looked almost diminished in his human form. "Ansel," Klaus's voice carried a note of genuine surprise. "The pack leader?" His initial shock quickly gave way to bitter understanding. "Well, at least my coward of a father aimed high when he abandoned his seed. The mighty alpha who commands such respect from his pack, yet couldn't even claim his own blood." The irony wasn't lost on him. How many times had he heard tales of Ansel's bravery, his leadership, his strength, only to learn that this paragon of wolf virtue was the very man who had left him to face Michael's cruelty alone. "Shall we introduce ourselves?" Valley asked quietly, the mark on his arm pulsing with anticipation. "Though I believe he already knows my blade's bite." "Oh yes," Klaus replied, his smile promising violence. "Let's show him what family truly means." The morning mist curled around their feet as they emerged from the tree lane. Conversations around the camp died as the wolves sensed their presence, their instincts warning them of predators in their midst. Ansel looked up from his fire, his face paling as he recognized Valley, the demon who had scarred him in his wolf form. But then his gaze shifted to Klaus, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, guilt, fear, all passing in quick succession as he took in the features that mirrored his own. "The Mikaelsons," one of the wolves muttered, hands tightening on weapons. "What brings you to our camp?" Klaus ignored them all, his eyes fixed on Ansel. He circled the fire slowly, deliberately, like a predator savoring the moment before the strike. "We came to share interesting news," he said, his voice deceptively casual. "About family secrets, about lies." His smile grew sharp. "About cowards who sire children and leave them to face another man's wrath." Ansel's breath caught, understanding dawning on his face as Klaus's meaning became clear. "You know," he whispered, the words barely audible. "Indeed," Klaus replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "Tell me, mighty alpha, does leading a pack make up for abandoning your blood? Does their respect taste sweet enough to wash away your cowardice?" Ansel's eyes darted between Klaus and Valley, noting the air of command they both carried, the power that seemed to radiate from them. The wolves around the camp shifted uneasily, sensing the tension and the potential for violence. "Klaus," Ansel began, his voice tinged with regret. "I didn't know." "Didn't know?" Klaus interrupted, his voice mocking. "Didn't know you'd father a child? Or didn't know what father would do if he found out?" His eyes blazed with a mixture of anger and bitterness. "You feared him more than you cared for your own blood." Ansel took a cautious step forward, hands still raised to placate. "I wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" Klaus's laugh was sharp, humorless. "By leaving me to face Michael's protection alone? Tell me, what kind of father does that?" Valley watched the exchange silently, the mark on his arm pulsing with the tension in the air. This confrontation had been a long time coming, the culmination of secrets and betrayals spanning decades. Ansel's eyes pleaded for understanding. "I thought you'd be safer with your mother." "My mother," Klaus repeated, the words bitter in his mouth. "The woman who bound my true nature and filled my head with lies. The woman who feared what I might become." He took a step closer, the firelight casting long shadows across his face. "No, Ansel, you don't get to claim ignorance or good intentions. You abandoned me. You left me to become what I am now." Klaus paused, his gaze unwavering. And in a twisted way, "I suppose I should thank you," he said, his voice quiet but laced with venom. "Because of your cowardice, I became stronger. I exist. I have a true brother." He gestured to Valley, a testament to the family he'd grown with. "But even though I'm grateful for my existence, it means not that I'm not ashamed for the man you are. One going after married women. A coward who, even when in love, does not truly chase after what he wants, but simply watches as she is with another, as his own son calls another father. I am truly revolted by you." His eyes narrowed, the anger clear and unyielding. You chose your own skin over blood. You put yourself between a family and watched it tear apart. And for that, you will always be a coward in my eyes. Vala, seeing that Klaus finished, stepped forward, his presence commanding as he joined his brother, the mark on his arm pulsing with a sinister energy that mirrored the dark humor in his eyes. He regarded Ansel with a predatory smile, one that promised retribution. You know, Vala began, his voice smooth and edged with dark amusement. I hear it's bad form to run from your problems, but I suppose some wolves just can't resist chasing their own tails. The cruel joke hung in the air, as Vala's eyes gleamed as he continued. But we're not here to discuss your lack of bravery or your talent for self-preservation. No, unlike Niklaus, I'd like to focus on something else entirely. He leaned in slightly, his gaze locking onto Ansel's. You were there the night Henrik nearly died, the great black wolf who fought me but failed to protect your pack from their own recklessness. That scar, evidence I recognize my handwork. Any painter would, wouldn't you agree? Klaus's anger simmered beside him, but Vala's tone was light as he continued, almost conversational. You see, Henrik, our youngest brother, nearly died because of your pack. The wolves you failed to control. His black eyes bore into Ansel's, the weight of his words heavy with dark intent. And I intend to exact a little recompense for that oversight. The wolves around the camp shifted nervously, sensing the threat in Vala's demeanor. Consider this a lesson in accountability, Ansel, he continued, his voice dripping with sardonic amusement. Every action has consequences, even for an alpha who thought he could escape them. Vala's predatory smile remained fixed, the mark on his arm pulsing with an almost eager intensity. But I am not unjust. You were not the one who harmed Henrik. And so in respect to you being Klaus's biological father, I've decided to spare you. Vala continued, his tone now less casual and more malicious, the bloodlust hidden behind a veil. But there is a price for your life, Ansel, a debt that needs settling. He leaned forward slightly, taking out a sword of his from its sheath and stabbing it into the ground before Ansel, his gaze unyielding. I want the heads of each wolf who was there that day laid before me, and the one who hurt Henrik. His eyes gleamed with dark promise. You'll cut out his heart yourself and present it to us. Ansel's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. I cannot agree to that, he began, a hint of desperation in his voice, this being more instinct than anything, since he, though the reason unknown to him, felt the absolute danger from Vala that he did not sense before when they last fought. There must be another way dash before he could finish, though. A young, hot-blooded wolf from the pack, brimming with arrogance and defiance, stepped forward. He picked up the sword Vala had driven into the ground before Ansel and charged, his intentions clear. Vala moved with ease, sidestepping the attack with effortless grace. The young wolf stumbled past, his momentum carrying him forward as Vala then while stabbed him in the back, with his hand gripping his heart and ripping it out. Is that really your best, Ansel? Vala asked as the young werewolf's corpse fell, his voice dripping with mockery. Sending pups to play with wolves? Ansel's face twisted with a mixture of anger and desperation as he looked upon the young wolf's fate. This doesn't have to end in bloodshed, he insisted, though his resolve was wavering. But it will, Vala replied smoothly, unless you deliver what I demand. The heads of those who were there that night, and the heart of the one who harmed Henrik. Place them before us, or face the consequences. His gaze swept over the gathered wolves, each one feeling the weight of his words, the promise of violence that lingered unspoken in the air. I assure you, Ansel, I have no qualms about wiping out all your warriors if you refuse. The arrogant display ignited a fire in the pack, and another wolf called out to Ansel, drawing his own sword. We won't stand by while you threaten us, he shouted, a rallying cry that spurred more warriors to join him. Ansel's face twisted with a mixture of anger and desperation as he saw the situation spiraling out of control. Stop, he called, but his voice was drowned out by the clamor of swords being drawn. Vala stood firm, the mark on his arm glowing fiercely as the first wave of attackers rushed him. In a blur of motion, he dispatched them with ruthless efficiency, each strike precise and deadly. Their bodies fell around him like leaves in a storm, the ground stained with their blood. Seeing his warriors fall, Ansel hesitated for a moment, realizing the gravity of the confrontation. But as more of his pack joined the fray, he knew he had no choice but to fight. With a grim resolve, he stepped forward, his sword ready, and joined the melee. Valley danced through the chaos, his movements fluid and unstoppable, cutting down each assailant with ease. The air was filled with the sounds of battle, the clash of steel, the cries of the dying. And as the last of Ansel's warriors fell, only Ansel himself remained, facing the Mikaelsons alone. In an instant, Klaus appeared before Ansel, moving with supernatural speed that left the Alpha momentarily stunned. Klaus's hand plunged into Ansel's heart, the blood sputtering on, dripping with finality. Klaus's gaze bore into Ansel's, the moment heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. For the cowardice that tore apart what could have been, Klaus intoned, his voice steady and cold. For the son you left behind, abandoned, unknowing whether his fate is salvation or damnation. With a final, powerful motion, Klaus ripped Ansel's heart from his chest. The werewolf's eyes widened in shock and pain, his body convulsing as the curse within Klaus activated. Bones cracked and reshaped, his form twisting in agony. As Ansel's life ebbed away, Klaus fell before him, as his right leg's bone shattered. As the final breaths burst out of the Alpha's lungs, the final sight before him was Niklaus on his knees, Ansel's heart fallen to the side as he roared to the heavens, his eyes molten gold, for the original hybrid has been born. I drifted, a solitary wanderer in the ethereal realms, unmoored and aimless, when the whispers first reached me. They were like echoes carried on the wind, their origins unclear, but their message impossible to ignore. Tales of a powerful being among the living, a creature bearing the very mark of death. I told myself to leave it alone. The stories were likely nothing more than idle spirit gossip, but curiosity, insidious and insatiable, drove me to follow. Step by step, realm by realm, I traced the whispers to their source. It led me here, to the edge of a village that seemed to pulse with an unnatural vitality. The air was heavy, charged with an energy that blurred the boundaries between the living and the dead. Souls had gathered, drawn to the heart of the commotion. I knew I should have turned back, but instead, I moved closer, slipping between the shadows of the other side. The living bustled in their ignorance, unaware of the spectral throng moving among them. But I felt it, him, long before I saw him. A presence that warped the very fabric of reality, each step pulling the threads tighter, threatening to tear the world apart. Then I saw him, and the whispers fell silent in my mind. Valley Mikaelson. Even his name seemed insufficient for the reality of what he was. His form was a nightmare made flesh, a shifting tapestry of faces and forms, each one flickering into existence and then vanishing into the ether. Thousands of closed eyes adorned his body, their lids trembling as if on the verge of opening, and each held the promise of annihilation. His visage defied, ever-shifting, dancing between the grotesque and the divine, between beauty and terror. I could only watch, frozen in place as he passed me. And that's when it struck me. I was walking in the shadow of the devil. I forced myself not to look back, fighting against an overwhelming urge to see him again. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, but I held fast, a mantra pounding in my mind. Don't look. Don't you dare look. Eventually, his presence faded, though the weight of it lingered like the echo of a thunderclap. Only then did I exhale, and even that felt like a transgression. The whispers had led me here, to the heart of his domain, where the village had gathered to witness something extraordinary. He stood at the altar, his monstrous majesty looming over the proceedings. Beside him was Tadia, her beauty like a mirror to his darkness, each amplifying the other. This was no simple wedding. It was a convergence, a binding of power that would ripple through the realms. I stayed at the edge of the gathering, a silent observer torn between fascination and dread. And that's when she appeared, Ira materialized beside me, her form flickering with agitation. Her expression was a cocktail of urgency and reprimand. "Thorn," she hissed, her voice cutting through the noise in my head. "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." I almost laughed, the absurdity of it all pressing against my sanity. "Believe me, Ira, I'm painfully aware of that. But this place," I gestured toward the altar, "it's overwhelming. I couldn't stay away." "You fool," she snapped, gripping my arm with surprising strength. "You need to leave. Now, before it's too late." Her words were interrupted by a shift in the air, a barrier slamming into place. I felt it ripple through my essence, sealing the village and its occupants within. Ira dragged me away, pulling me to the periphery, where we hovered above, spectators to the unfolding chaos. Below us, the witches began to appear. Thousands of spirits, their power tangible even in death. At their forefront was Ketsia, her presence a storm in itself. Her spectral form shimmered with an ancient, indomitable energy, her eyes fixed on Valley with unyielding determination. "They're going to destroy him," Ira explained, her voice a mixture of awe and dread. "The Mikaelsons, with one powerful curse. They're calling on nature itself to unleash every disaster imaginable upon them." From our vantage point, we watched as the Mikaelsons stood defiantly against the oncoming storm of spiritual power. Vala's spiritual eyes opened, though in a sense right now unnecessary, as the spiritual presence was so much that even the living would now be able to see them. Though still it was terrifying as all of them directed towards everyone, his rage inside them palpable, sending tremors through my soul. He was furious at not being able to enjoy his wedding, I reasoned. "I will not be destroyed by you," he suddenly declared, addressing them all, breaking the deafening silence, his voice a dark promise. "I promise you, if you attempt this, I'll tear the other side apart. I'll make sure none of you ever rest, that you all are damned into an eternity of torment." The defiance in his words resonated through the air, a testament to his unyielding will and the power he wielded. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Mikaelsons stood united, ready to face whatever came their way. The tension hung thick, an invisible fog choking the air as Ketsia stepped forward, her spectral form shimmering with an ancient, indomitable energy. Her eyes bore into the devil, whose monstrous visage seemed to smile, a tapestry of grotesque beauty and sinister splendor. "You presume much, Vala Mikaelson," Ketsia began, her voice echoing with authority. "Your threats echo with the arrogance of one who has tasted power but not yet understood its weight." Vala chuckled at the sight of her, his voice a dark melody of amusement. "Seeing your appearance and your position, I presume you're the leader of this wave of fools. Ketsia, right? I know the stories. I've seen some magical paintings of you. I know who you are and what you want, and I stand by my statement once more. Act against me, and see what I will do. You will never meet your precious Silas again." Klaus joined in, his tone dripping with mockery. "Unlike my brother, I have no bloody idea who you are, nor do I really care. You must simply understand that whatever you think your little storm will do, it will fail. We faced worse than a few gusts of wind and angry spirits. We're the Mikaelsons, darling. Creatures unseen since creation began." As the two Mikaelsons voiced their scorn, the others stood composed and defiant as Rebecca remained silent, focusing on shielding Henrik with a protective embrace. Her quiet strength was a testament to the family's unity, ready to defy the supernatural storm that threatened them. Ketsia's eyes narrowed, her spectral form shimmering with an indomitable energy. Her voice was a cold, cutting blade as she addressed the Mikaelsons. "You jest in the face of power you cannot comprehend," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "I was the first to weave the spell of immortality, to challenge the natural order. Do not think you could defy the forces I command." With a gesture, she called upon the curse, anchoring it upon Valley and spreading it to the rest of the family through him. The air crackled with energy as the very elements responded to her will. The earth trembled, storms gathered, and fire rained from the sky. The power of the curse sought to spread from Valley to his family, a relentless force of nature. But Valis stood firm, his darkness rising to meet the onslaught. The mark on his arm glowed with a fierce crimson light, pushing back against the curse with every ounce of his defiance. The earth shook beneath him, but he remained unyielding, the storms raging around him like a tempest. "Is this the best you can muster?" Vala taunted, his voice carrying over the chaos. "I've seen worse tantrums from children." The thousands of witches immediately joined in and fought him. Ira did as well, but I myself couldn't. There was just something about him. I don't know, awe-inspiring, terrifying, hellish, divine. I don't know how to describe it. I just stood there and watched as the darkness fought against the magic, pushing and pushing each side to the other, nearly tearing everything apart. Suddenly, though, the devil's being shifted. His smoke turned into a blazing inferno. Crimson light began to emanate from him in all directions, as with a roar he pushed back, with a roar pushing away their magic. The ground trembled underfoot, the gathered witches faltering as the sheer force of his will and power. The roar that erupted from him was a primal sound, a declaration of power that reverberated through the realms. His energy surged outward, a shockwave of red light, it shattering into pieces like blades, making the spirits flee in fear of harm, causing them to scatter like leaves in a storm. The other Mikaelsons stood beside him, their unity a bulwark against the onslaught. Klaus, Michael, Elijah, Finn, and Rebecca held their ground, their expressions resolute as they faced the spirit's wrath. Even young Henrik, shielded by Rebecca's embrace, emanated a quiet strength. As the witch's power dissipated, the sky cleared and the earth stilled. I was surprised when I felt a great warmth in my chest. As I looked down, I saw a shard of red light inside my chest. It was peculiar. I reasonably knew that this meant death. Nothing should be able to harm a spirit, but since it did, it means that this is my end. And yet, I did not feel fear or anger, just quiet acceptance. I suppose the reason may be that I've already lived a long and terrible existence, and that I deep down wanted this event that is causing my end. As my essence began to fade, I couldn't help but chuckle. In the end, I simply walked too close to the devil's flame. God, I would have loved to see more of the story. The village lay still in the wake of the supernatural storm, the air heavy with the scent of rain and scorched earth. The Mikaelsons stood at the center of the devastation, their unity unbroken despite the chaos that had unfolded. The sky above was clear now, the angry storm clouds dispersed by Vala's defiant power. Klaus, the newly awakened hybrid, stood beside him, his expression a mix of triumph and contemplation. "They thought they could end us," he said, his voice carrying a hint of disbelief. "But here we stand." Elijah, ever the voice of reason, stepped forward. "This was only the beginning," he cautioned, his gaze sweeping over the village. Kitsia and her followers will not cease their attempts to reclaim what they see as theirs. Finn nodded, his expression grim. "We must prepare for what comes next. Our power has grown, but so has the threat against us." Rebecca held Henrik close, her protective instincts stronger than ever. The young boy looked up at his siblings, the fear in his eyes slowly giving way to admiration. They were his guardians, his protectors in this world of darkness and light. Amidst the aftermath, Vala's body was tensed, his expression contorting with pain. The mark on his arm suddenly began pulsing erratically, a crimson warning that something was amiss. Before he could utter a word, his legs buckled, and he fell to the ground, barely catching himself before his face hit the dirt. "Valley?" Tadia yelled out, worry threading through her voice. She appeared at his side in an instant, her speed nearly a blur to the human eye. Her expression was one of concern as she knelt beside him, her hands gently checking him for injuries, her eyes searching his face for answers. "What's happening?" she demanded firmly, though soft enough to not increase his pain. Valley himself could not immediately answer as his vision swam, as he looked down at his trembling hands, the ground beneath him a blur as he fought to maintain consciousness. The mark on his arm continuing to pulse with warning. As he focused, his spiritual eyes opened, revealing the intricate weaves of the curse that entangled him, connecting him to his siblings like a web of malevolent intent. The curse was unlike anything he had encountered before. It wasn't a single strike, but a constantly renewing assault, a relentless tide that he had to continuously push back. For himself, the mark provided a shield, a barrier against the curse's full force. But for his siblings, the situation was more precarious. Vala's mind raced as he considered the intricacies of it. The mark on his arm, while powerful, did not outright negate magic. It provided resistance, a formidable defense against most spells, but it truly excelled in countering obliteration magic. This curse, however, was a relentless force that required constant vigilance to keep at bay. The mark's protection extended to his siblings, but it was a precarious balance, one that could not hold indefinitely. Gathering his strength, Valley addressed his siblings, knowing the gravity of their situation demanded clarity, though his voice pained. This curse is anchored to me, using me as a conduit to reach all of you. It's a storm that will grow stronger with time, unleashing the wrath of nature itself. We can't let it gain momentum. He paused, ensuring he had their full attention. The mark gives me resistance against magic, but it's not absolute. We need to find the essence of this spell, the core of the curse, and destroy it as fast as possible. Can't we outrun it? Lessen the burden upon you by creating distance. Cole suddenly questioned as he took in his brother's words. Valley shook his head as he attempted to push himself back up, but nearly once more fell, if not for Tadia catching his fall. His voice carried the weight of their predicament. Distance doesn't matter. This curse connects itself through blood, through us being family. From what I'm feeling with how much destruction it's causing to the power I'm expending to protect all of you, it should take roughly 50 years for the curse to fully manifest. Valley was especially grateful that there was apparently some kind of loophole he didn't know about the mark that allowed it, because of their connection through blood, soul, and curse, that a bit of protection was applied to them. So you're saying that we need to keep moving, never settling long enough in one place for the curse to build up its strength and manifest fully. Finn noted, his expression firm with worry. Vala nodded. Yes, but that's not a permanent solution. For even though the buildup returns to the beginning every time we move, the place we left will still contain the magic already collected. And so if we return, it will continue simply from where it left off. Vala's expression turned wry, a touch of his characteristic dark humor surfacing. I never thought I'd say this, but I wish we had a trustworthy family witch on our side. Finn, who had been deep in thought, spoke up, his voice carrying a hint of hope. There possibly is such a person, a family witch. His words drew puzzled looks from his siblings, save for Valley, who remained silent, his memories from another life providing the answer. Finn continued, his gaze distant as he recalled the past. I've refrained from stating this because of fear, but I suppose it no longer matters. Our sister, Freya. Michael's face darkened with fury as Finn became silent to allow them to take his words in. Freya? You speak of Freya as if she's still alive. What do you mean, Finn? Finn met his father's gaze, his own expression a mixture of regret and resolve. Freya, she was long ago taken by Dahlia, our mother's sister. Mother told me she had struck a deal with her sister because she was barren. She couldn't have children without the proper magical power, which she did not possess at the time. So she promised Dahlia every firstborn child of her bloodline. Dahlia came in the dead of the night during a cold winter and took our eldest sister by force. I haven't seen her since. I don't even know if she's alive, but I remember, even as a child, she had great potential. She was said to be powerful, even then. And why was I not told this sooner? Michael's voice cut in, his tone full of cold rage. He felt both hope and rage at what he heard, but currently, his rage overshadowed any bit of relief he felt at the possibility of his beloved Freya being alive. Finn's gaze remained steady, though his voice carried the weight of his burden. There was never a right time, Father. We were already dealing with so much. Mother's machinations, the transformations, the threats against us. I didn't know how to bring it up, not when everything else was falling apart. Whether she's alive or not, Dash. Valley interjected as he finally was able to rise up, his tone firm but thoughtful. We need to find her. If she is, she might be our best hope of breaking this curse. And if she's not, then it's our duty as her family to seek vengeance for the injustice she faced. Elijah nodded at Vala's words, his expression resolute. Then we search for her. We do whatever it takes to bring her back. He stated the perfect picture of the protective, noble brother that he is. Deep down, even though this world wasn't exactly the same as the show he watched, his existence a testament to that fact. Valley was confident that Freya was alive, but kept his certainty to himself. The only reason, in fact, he currently is so supportive of this search for his long-lost sister is because he knows she's alive. He knows she's their greatest hope. If these things were not the case, then he'd put this search away for the time being, no matter what everyone else's protests state. He, after all, wasn't one foolish enough to prioritize the dead over the living. Vengeance is something he delights in, but only morons would let it consume them. Then I suggest we collect everything we need and leave this place immediately, Cole suddenly stated. What do you mean? Why must we leave our home so soon? The witches are gone. Our brother's wedding just finished. Can't we enjoy a bit of peace for a change? Rebecca protested, her voice filled with her frustration. Sister, don't be a fool. I know you know not much about magic, despite our mother's firm attempts at making you learn, but you should know that this village is now hallowed ground. It is where we became what we are and where this curse began. If we remain here and waste time, the magic will build up and eventually destroy this place. And maybe with it taking our chances at breaking this curse with it forever. For who knows what all the intricacies of this curse are. It may need us to specifically break it for all we know. Cole did it. Cole is right. We need to act quickly. I'll go with him to Mother's spell chamber and collect all the materials alongside her grimoire. The rest of you should go and settle whatever you need to settle, for we need to move quick, Vala stated as he was dusting himself off, attempting to slap away the dust and dirt now attached to his clothes. Okay, but where are we going? Henrik suddenly questioned, his voice barely above a whisper, though still able to be heard by their enhanced senses. The old world. It is somewhere we normally would never go. Distance enough for Dahlia to be able to prepare in case Esther ever built up enough strength and courage to face her. Michael answered as he looked his youngest in the eyes. Then I'll be leaving first, no time to waste. I'll see you at the chamber, big brother, Cole stated as he sped away, leaving no room for response. The others, without a word, also began to disperse. For now, they had a curse they needed to break, a world to make tremble at the mere mention of their names. The rhythmic clatter of hooves echoed through the dense, shadowed forest as a lone carriage meandered down the narrow dirt road. Moonlight barely pierced the canopy of intertwined branches above, leaving the path ahead cloaked in a dim, ghostly glow. The driver, a wiry man with a patchy beard and sunken eyes, gripped the reins loosely, his tired hands occasionally adjusting his seat. He hummed a fractured, off-tune melody, the low notes punctuating the eerie silence that enveloped the night. Crickets chirped sporadically in the underbrush, but even their songs seemed subdued, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. A cool breeze stirred the leaves, carrying with it a faint, unsettling metallic tang. The driver wrinkled his nose, but shook off the feeling, chalking it up to the odd humidity of the air. As the road curved sharply ahead, the man slowed the horses, squinting into the dark. His eyes widened when the shape of an overturned cart emerged from the shadows, its jagged wooden edges illuminated faintly by the pale moonlight. Something about it felt wrong, out of place. He pulled the reins sharply, bringing his carriage to a halt with a heavy creak of wood and a soft whinny from the horses. Muttering under his breath, he dismounted, his worn boots crunching against the gravel and loose dirt. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled as he approached the abandoned cart, its eerie stillness amplifying the unsettling quiet around him. As he neared, the metallic scent in the air intensified, sharp and nauseating. His stomach twisted, the melody he'd been humming now, an unspoken thought, as unease took hold. He stepped closer, his lantern trembling slightly in his grasp, the flickering flame casting fleeting shadows over the broken wood. Peering over the edge of the cart, his breath caught in his throat. The far corner of the wooden planks was soaked in dark, sticky blood. It pooled thickly, dripping sluggishly down the side. His stomach churned violently at the sight, and he stumbled back a step. "What in the dash?" he muttered hoarsely, his voice barely more than a whisper, as if speaking louder might awaken whatever horror this scene concealed. He edged closer again, against his better judgment, leaning forward to get a better look. The stench of blood was overpowering now, making his eyes water. The man reached out cautiously, his fingers trembling as they brushed the edge of the blood-stained wood. Before he could process what he was seeing, a shadow moved, a blur too fast for his mortal eyes. A cold, iron grip closed around his arm, and he was yanked backward with impossible force. The lantern fell from his hand, shattering against the ground in a burst of light and sparks that illuminated his wide, panicked eyes for just a moment. The forest exploded into chaos. His scream was cut short as he was slammed into the ground, his head cracking against the earth. Blood gushed from his mouth as a dark figure loomed over him, fangs gleaming in the faint moonlight. Nearby, the horses reared and whinnied frantically, their hooves striking against the ground as they tried to flee. The man's body went limp as another figure emerged from the shadows. A long-haired, methodical Elijah, dragging the driver's discarded carriage further into the forest, his calm efficiency contrasting the violence unfolding mere feet away. Elijah stood a few feet away, pulling down branches to cover the man's abandoned carriage. His long hair framed his face as he worked swiftly and silently, his motions meticulous. Nearby, the grotesque sound of slurping filled the air. Honestly, Cole groaned, wiping blood from his chin as he pulled back from the man he'd been feeding on, now laying bisected on the ground. Was this really necessary? From behind him, Vala stood over a bisected corpse as well, the precision of his telekinetic slash evident in the clean cut. Cole threw his hands up in exasperation. Seriously, brother? Can't you interrupt someone else's dinner with your experiments? Like Nick, perhaps? Vala smirked, flicking his wrist as a nearby branch snapped cleanly in two, floating lazily to the ground. His tone was light, almost teasing. You've already been gorging yourself, Cole. Besides, I'm refining a skill. Call it efficiency. Valley has the last weeks been experimenting with his telekinetic powers to replicate an ability he once saw in an anime. He's been cutting people apart with a flick of his wrist and becoming preciser and deadlier with it by the day. Indeed, one of the best parts about having regained the memories of his past life is that not only did it give him knowledge about this world, but also the blueprint on how to take more creative liberties with his abilities. Cole, if anyone here can complain, it isn't you. You've had more than your fill. You are after all more gluttonous than us all. Say Valley, of course. Klaus stated as he dragged the bodies of the driver's companions toward the overturned cart, his lips curling into a grin. Vala looked down at the three drained corpses by his feet and raised an eyebrow. I take offense to that. Do the bodies say otherwise? Klaus quipped, smirking. Rebecca sighed, stepping around the bloodied mess as she carried Henrik in her arms. Must you always bicker like children? This is why we can't have a normal meal. Elijah, who had finally concealed the carriage, straightened and brushed dirt from his hands. Enough, he said firmly. We've fed, we've prepared. It's time to move. As they gathered themselves to continue their journey, Rebecca turned her thoughts to more ambitious desires. You know, there are nobles with castles just waiting to be taken over. Why should we be hiding in the woods like common thieves? Elijah frowned, ever the voice of caution. Rebecca, we have discussed this dash. You and Father discussed this. None of us had any say in the matter. This lot we're traveling somewhere. Their cart is full of silks and finery. 9 of them, 9 of us. Wherever they were off to, why could we not simply go in their stead? It would be good for Henrik as well. All this traveling can't be good for him. Rebecca, don't try to use Henrik as backing for your words. We cannot simply take over a noble's estate. It would draw far too much attention. Elijah countered Valley, however, had a different perspective. Why not use a little compulsion? We have the means to make things happen go our way. He hadn't entered into the conversation the last time because he was waiting for the right moment, this time it being so. Rebecca brightened instantly, her eyes gleaming with mischief. See, Elijah, even Valley agrees with me. Imagine the luxury, the power. We be treated like royalty. Seriously, Valley? Brother, I expected more wisdom from you. You truly agree with our sister to masquerade as nobles from a land we do not know and whose customs we cannot begin to understand? Is nothing short of ridiculous, Elijah stated in retort. Before Rebecca, who opened her mouth, could say anything in retort, Michael spoke up. Be silent, he commanded, his voice low but firm. The bickering that had flared between his children moments before ceased instantly. Michael closed his eyes, tilting his head as though listening to the whispers of the wind itself. His breathing slowed, and the others exchanged glances, recognizing the tension that had settled over him. Cole raised an eyebrow, stepping closer to Elijah and Klaus. Father's doing that thing again, he murmured under his breath, though his tone was laced with genuine curiosity. Rebecca, cradling the compelled to sleep, Henrik leaned in closer. What is it now? Vala's hand shot up, silencing her before she could say more. Also having closed his eyes, they soon enough snapped open, their dark depths piercing the darkness. There's someone nearby, he said, his tone certain. Vala began to approach the carriage, and as he did, he immediately pulled away the blanket, revealing a young, dark-haired man who was terrified to see them. He, breathing erratically, jumped away. He attempts to flee, but Cole and Rebecca vamp speed in front of him and block his way. Well, aren't you a handsome one? Rebecca comments with a smile. Looks like dessert to me, Cole states as he begins stalking towards the man. Wait, I can help you. Lucien states, terrified, raising his hands in a non-threatening manner attempt to stop him. As everyone looked toward another at his words, Thaddeus spoke. Could we please hear him out? I know we wish to remain cautious, but I have to agree with Rebecca on this one. Thank you, dear sister. It seems finally someone other than Valley is wise enough to see things correctly, Rebecca stated, a hint of smugness in her tone at another one agreeing with her. Lucien, seeing his opportunity, continues nervously. Now I am the personal servant to the Count de Martel, and the barriers that you just mentioned. I was sent to escort these guests to his home for a lengthy stay. I know their customs, as well as the Count's habits. If you mean to pose as the family you've slaughtered here, then you'll need my help to carry out your ruse. Lucien looks nervously at Elijah and Michael, who are standing next to each other, them and Cole, the only ones still looking like they want to eat him. Please, can we keep him? Rebecca asks, her tone hopeful. No, daughter. Have you already forgotten what our most important rule is? Michael questioned, his tone harsh and cold. Rebecca flinches for a moment until she softly begins. Never leave anyone alive, who has seen what we are. Finn, Elijah, Cole, and Niklaus finish for her. Thank you very much. A practice that has served us very well indeed. Elijah states as he leaves his father's side and attempts to begin his approach towards Lucien before Valley appears at his side, holding him by the arm. You know, I personally enjoy following your lead, Elijah. Your strategies have never failed us before, but on this one, I have to side with our sister. He may very well be of use. Vala states, especially with what I've seen him accomplish. Valley thinks to himself. Lucien has proven himself quite the resourceful fellow in the show, able to even plan well enough to nearly bring the Mikaelsons to ruin. One would expect Vala to kill him for this before he becomes a threat, but why should he do so when he can be so much more useful alive? Proper family squabble, Cole remarks. Perhaps we should put it to a vote. Niklaus begins as he leaves the side of the horses. All those in favor of letting him live. Rebecca, Tadia, and Valley raise their hands. Those inclined to gut him, Cole questions as he raises his hand. Elijah raises his hand like it is the most obvious thing in the world, with their father, Michael, following him. So it comes down to you two, Vala states as he looks at Finn and Klaus, who are the only ones left to vote. I vote to let him live, Finn states after a moment of thought. This causes everyone's eyes to draw towards Klaus. Oh, Nick, what shall it be? Cold questions. Klaus sighs and pauses for a moment before walking toward Lucien, who still looks terrified. The Mikaelsons, led by Lucien, have arrived at the castle in the fine clothes of their earlier victims, where some sort of celebration is underway. Rebecca, Henrik, Finn, Elijah, and Niklaus look the most nervous as they take in the grand interior of the castle, while Michael alongside Vali and Tadia are the calmest. The former two, because of their warrior mentality, ready to slaughter everyone there if they became threats, while the latter, because of her own experience with compulsion, having complete trust in it, unlike the others who have not yet truly made full use of it. Lucien fills them in on the details they need to know to blend in effectively as he gestures toward the Count, who is sitting on his throne at the far side of the room. There, see the Count de Martel? You address him as Your Grace. All the other nobles as my lord. And when you speak to the Count, you should speak of hunting. He loves his horse and his hounds. Lucien states as he respectfully looks sideways at Rebecca, who is so anxious she looks as though she may throw up. And bow deep, Lady Rebecca. The Count relishes a healthy cleavage. Lucien whispers, earning a growl from Vali and a murderous glare from Michael. You will do no such thing, Vali commands with a harsh glare towards Rebecca, who immediately deflates from any retort she had on her tongue as she saw his furious expression. The demon with swiftness walked next to Lucien and gently wrapped his hand around the back of his neck as he whispered, Do keep that kind of advice to yourself next time if you wish to still have spine. Another like it, and I'll strangle you with your own intestines. His tone now more casual and nonchalant as if talking about the weather. Blink twice if you understand, Vali orders, his grip on the human keeping him from nodding. Lucien with haste blinks twice, nervous and terrified. Vali smiles as he lets his neck go and slaps his back twice with enough strength to make it hurt, but not bisect him in two. That wasn't so hard now, was it? The group after this finally makes it to the throne of Count de Martel, and Lucien bows dramatically in front of him before making introductions. Lucien, you were sent to fetch the Count de Guise. The Count de Martel states, his tone cold. Before Lucien can say anything, Vali comes to the forefront as he looks the Count in the eyes. The Count de Guise is indisposed, Your Grace. Dead. But you don't mind us, who have come this long way to stay in your home, do you? You should treat us as you would have treated the Count and his family, shouldn't you? We promise that we will truly make your life a lot more interesting. I indeed do not mind. You are all welcome in our home and shall be treated with utmost respect. The Count de Martel states, the compulsion taking effect. Everyone save Taddeo watching in awe and wonder. Lucien a most. Oh Lord, what kind of creatures have I gotten myself tangled with? We are very thankful, Your Grace. If you do not mind, we wish to excuse ourselves. Our journey has been a long and perilous one. We wish to rest. Vali continued with a bow. Of course, the Count de Martel exclaimed, his voice steady yet filled with enthusiasm. He turned to Lucien with a pointed gesture. Lucien, escort our esteemed guests to the quarters at the far end of the hall on the top floor. Ensure they are made comfortable. At once, my lord, he said, his tone respectful, yet still reeling. Without hesitation, he straightened and gestured for the Mikaelsons to follow, his steps purposeful as he led the way. What? Lucien suddenly questioned. Why what? Vali questioned in response, as they all made their way, his siblings still looking in wonder at the exterior. Why did you even spare me if you could do that? Because I wanted to, Vali answered, his tone nonchalant as he walked with his hands crossed behind his head. That isn't an answer. There's always a reason for what. Lucien retorted as he then licked his lips nervously. He knew it may not be wise to continue, not wishing to overstep, but he simply needed to know. Vali became silent as they all still continued to walk, his family who were earlier speaking also following his example, also wishing to know what he was thinking. They could guess, but hearing it from him, himself, would make things more clear. A couple of reasons, I suppose. Even though we can compel people to do whatever we wish, it still would have been a bit annoying since we do not know all the customs of this place. But as you already probably can reason, it would simply have been a minor inconvenience since we could still compel another besides you to teach us. No, the true reason is because I see potential in you, little warrior. Valley explains as he, with a side glaze, looks him in the eyes. Me? A warrior? I am sorry, my lord, but you jest. I have not a warrior's bone in my body. Lucian states in disbelief. No, I'm quite serious. You may not have the greatest physical might, nor the vastest amount of understanding of the art of battle, but you are quite quick on your feet. With the knowledge you had at hand, from merely listening to us bicker, you were able to convince more than half of us to allow you to live, by which the others became forced to tolerate your presence, because of their desire to not cause infighting. You have potential, and I am willing to nurture it, so long as you promise to serve me. And there was his offer. Lucian himself at first was too shocked to respond, but he immediately gained understanding and dropped to his knees, hand on his heart, head lowered, bowing. It would be my greatest honor to be of service to you, my lord. Lucian states, his tone full of respect and wonder at the opportunity. He, a mere stable boy, now offered the backing of a mighty king among men. One who, wherever he goes, people would submit to simply by consequence of his own might. The other Mikaelsons also stopped, Lucian and Vala blocking their way, though they did not truly mind. What Vala was doing was quite interesting. This is the first time Michael and the siblings saw him showing remotely any form of interest in anyone's capabilities, always seeing anyone's save family as either food or inconsequential gnats. Good. Now rise and continue leading the way. I have quite the plans for you. Vala states with a smile as he puts his hand on Lucian's shoulder, who raises his head and looks at him in awe. Never having anyone in his life truly see anything worth noting in him, save the Lady Aurora. Of course, my lord. I shall do my utmost to never disappoint. Lucian stated as he hastily rose and walked forward once more, causing Vala to chuckle. You better, Lucian. You better. The Knight of Hell stated as they all followed him, his tone at the end full of promises of malice. It has been a couple of weeks since the Mikaelsons have integrated themselves into the noble life. Currently, they were at one of the Count's various parties, for nobles truly have nothing better to do than entertain themselves. The grand halls of Castle de Martel were alive with opulence, the air thick with laughter, music, and the soft clink of goblets meeting in toasts. Yet beneath the gilded veneer of celebration, danger slithered unseen. Vala Mikaelson leaned against the stone archway near the hall's edge, his dark eyes scanning the sea of nobles. To them, he was an enigmatic predator, his stillness exuding power that unsettled even the boldest of men. Beside him, Tadia moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, her beauty so radiant it seemed to draw the room's very breath into her orbit. A noblewoman, the Countess du Bois, boldly approached Valley, her painted lips curling into what she clearly thought was an alluring smile. Tadia's sharp eyes tracked every move, her posture still as stone, but her presence brimming with unspoken warning. The Countess's hand rested lightly on Vala's arm, her voice low and sweet as she leaned in to speak. My lord, the Countess purred, her gaze intent. Surely a man of your stature could spare one dance for a lonely lady? Vala's eyes flicked to Tadia for the briefest of moments, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. He removed the Countess's hand from his arm with deliberate slowness, his tone velvet over steel. My dear Countess, I believe you've had too much wine. You should retire for the evening. The Countess blinked, confusion clouding her features. Vala's pupils dilated slightly as his voice took on a compelling edge. Take the long way back to your chambers, through the garden maze. My wife will meet you there. The Countess nodded dreamily, turning and floating from a hall in a haze of compulsion. Vala's gaze found Tadia's across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. Her lips curved into a wicked smile as she turned her attention back to the nobles who dared to glance her way, each instinctively averting their eyes. As the Countess drifted away under compulsion's influence, Aurora de Martel approached Tadia, her curiosity evident beneath her carefully cultivated poise. My lady, Aurora began, her voice musical yet probing. "I couldn't help but notice you never join the dances. The music tonight is particularly enchanting." Tadia's gaze remained fixed on the crowd, though her lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "I prefer to watch." "But surely for appearance's sake dash," Aurora pressed, only to fall silent as Tadia's eyes met hers. There was something in that gaze that made Aurora's carefully maintained composure waver. "I do not share," Tadia stated simply, her voice soft but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. "Not even for appearances. Not a dance, not a touch, not a moment. My husband is mine alone, as I am his." Aurora studied her for a moment, fascinated despite her unease. "Such devotion is rare in these halls," she observed carefully. "Devotion?" Tadia's laugh was low and dark. "No, my dear. This is possession, complete and absolute." The conversation ended there, Aurora retreating with a newfound understanding of the dangerous waters she'd tested. She rejoined her brother, who had watched the exchange with calculating eyes. The night wore on, with Klaus appearing moments later to inform Valley about a discovery of theirs in the lower chambers. As they descended into the castle's depths, Tadia's attention returned to the gathering, particularly to the de Martel siblings. Aurora had retreated to her brother's side, but Tadia could hear their whispered conversation with her enhanced senses. "She's different from the others," Aurora murmured to Tristan. "There's something about her, about both of them." "Careful, sister," Tristan warned, his voice barely a breath. "Some mysteries are better left unexplored." Tadia's lips curved into a slight smile. If only they knew how right they were. Her attention shifted to the garden maze where the Countess would soon meet her fate. There would be no evidence, of course, there never was. Just another noble who vanished into the night, leaving nothing but whispered rumors in her wake. A servant approached with a goblet of wine, but froze when Tadia's gaze fell upon him. She could smell his fear, hear his heart racing. These mortals, with their instincts screaming danger, yet their minds unable to comprehend why. It was amusing. She could still not help, but be in disbelief when thinking about how she was once one of them. "My lady," Lucian appeared at her side, bowing slightly. "Lord Valley asked me to inform you that he may be occupied longer than expected. They found something of significance." Tadia nodded, unsurprised. She had sensed the undercurrents of power in this castle since their arrival. At first, Klaus wanted to immediately investigate because of his ever-curious nature, but Valley stopped him. He, for some odd reason, even though he's the strongest of them, wished to take a more careful approach, saying that this is too unexpected to not approach carefully. "Tell me, Lucian," she said softly, "what have you found out of the de Martel's collection habits? You promised to do more research on it last Val questioned you. Has it bore any fruit?" Lucian's expression flickered with unease, but nodded. "Yes, though they've always been collectors, my lady. Art, books, and the like, but in the recent years, there were apparently collection of artifacts of unusual nature. Their interests have become suspiciously specific." "Since when?" Tadia pressed, noting how Lucian's eyes darted briefly to a darkened corridor where a hooded figure had just disappeared. "Since the arrival of certain visitors," Lucian replied carefully. "Scholars, they claim to be, but their presence changed something in the siblings, especially Aurora. Even I, her closest aide, had not noticed the connection before, were it not for Lord Vala's observative perspective." Tadia's interest sharpened. "These scholars described them. They wore medallions," Lucian recalled, his voice dropping lower, "marked with a symbol I'd never seen before, like a tree, but twisted unnatural. They spent hours with Lord Tristan in his private study, and afterward," he hesitated. "Go on," Tadia encouraged. "Afterward, Aurora began having her episodes more frequently, and Lord Tristan, he apparently became obsessed with certain texts, ancient things. The castle staff I questioned whispered about strange sound from the lower chambers, rituals performed under moonlight." Tadia absorbed this information, pieces of a puzzle beginning to align. "These visitors, they still come?" "Less often now," Lucian admitted, "but their influence remains. The siblings are waiting for something, my lady. Something important. A A commotion from the garden drew their attention. Someone had discovered the Countess's fate sooner than expected. As nobles rushed to investigate, Tadia remained still, her mind working through the implications of Lucien's words. The de Martels were indeed pawns in a larger game. But whose? And more importantly, how could this be turned to their advantage? As if sensing her thoughts, the mark on Vala's arm pulsed faintly where he stood in the lower chambers, responding to ancient powers that had long slumbered beneath Castle de Martel's foundations. The game was becoming more interesting by the moment. In the lower chambers, Valet traced the strange symbols on one of the grimoires, his enhanced senses picking up residual energy that felt oddly familiar. The mark on his arm pulsed in recognition, though the source of that recognition remained elusive. "Look at this," Klaus called, holding up a weathered parchment. "The writing, it's similar to what we saw in Mother's grimoire, but older somehow." Elijah moved closer, his eyes narrowing. "These aren't just collection records," he observed. "They're instructions, preparations for something." Val's attention caught on a particular phrase. The ancient text spoke of the sleeping immortal and the key to ultimate power. His memories from another life provided context his brothers lacked. These were references to Silas. "Brothers," he said quietly, "I believe we've stumbled onto something far more significant than simple artifacts. These aren't just collectors, they're followers, devotees of a much older power." Before he could elaborate, footsteps echoed from above, multiple sets moving with purpose. The de Martel siblings had noticed their absence. "Perfect timing," Klaus smiled darkly. "Shall we ask them about their interesting hobby?" "Not yet," Valak cautioned, quickly replacing the grimoire. "Let them think their secrets are still hidden." For now, they made their way back to the Great Hall, emerging just as Aurora and Tristan began descending the main staircase. The siblings' composed expressions couldn't quite hide their relief at seeing the Mikaelsons return. "My lords," Tristan greeted them smoothly. "We missed your presence at the evening's entertainment." "Did you?" Vala's smile held a predatory edge. "We found plenty to entertain ourselves with. Your castle holds such fascinating secrets." Aurora's laugh was practiced but brittle. "All old castles have their mysteries, though few are worth exploring." "I disagree," Valet replied, his gaze boring into hers. "Some mysteries demand investigation. Wouldn't you agree, Lord Tristan?" The subtle tension in Tristan's shoulders didn't escape notice. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "though some mysteries are better left undisturbed." The exchange was interrupted by a commotion from the gardens. The Countess had been discovered, or what remained of her. Nobles rushed to investigate, their excited whispers filling the hall. Tadia appeared at Vala's side, her presence drawing Aurora's wary gaze. "How tragic," Tadia remarked, her voice carrying false sympathy. "The gardens can be so treacherous at night." "Indeed," Aurora replied, studying Tadia with newfound intensity. "One must be careful where they wander." She still could not understand what her brother found out about them, that he tolerated such actions. And yet, she herself could not help but both fear them and be drawn to them, especially Niklaus. Though these attractions were not enough to hide the underlying current of threat in their exchange was clear to all who witnessed it. The de Martel siblings soon, at Tristan's wants, excused themselves to attend to the situation, leaving the Mikaelsons to observe the chaos their presence had created. Later that night, in their private chambers, Valet shared his discoveries with Tadia. "Silas's followers. Isn't that the first immortal you told me about? Something about me being a doppelganger of his lover. The first immortal?" she questioned, trailing her fingers along his chest. At Vala's nod, she chuckled, as she mused, using the de Martels to collect artifacts for their sleeping god. "Clever. They've been manipulating this family for generations," Vala stated. "The question is, what are they preparing for? Does it matter?" Tadia's smile was wicked. "Whatever their plans, they've led us to something potentially useful. The artifacts they've gathered, they can help us break our curse." Valet pulled her closer, his black eyes gleaming in the candlelight. "True. Though I suspect getting to them won't be as simple as we'd like." "Nothing worth having ever is," she replied, her voice dropping to a seductive whisper. "But that's what makes it fun, isn't it? Their laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound that would have chilled the blood of anyone who heard it. In the castle below, servants whispered about the Countess's fate, though none dared speak too loudly. The de Martells retreated to their private quarters, their minds racing with plans and contingencies. And somewhere, in the shadows of the castle, hooded figures gathered, discussing the unexpected variables that had entered their carefully laid plans. The Mikaelsons were a force they hadn't accounted for, powerful, unpredictable, and worst of all, interested in their activities. The game was becoming more complex by the moment, and no one could predict who would emerge victorious. The autumn wind swept through Castle de Martel's corridors, carrying with it the last remnants of summer's warmth. 3 months had passed since the Mikaelsons' arrival, and with each passing day, the web of intrigue had grown more intricate. Valis stood at his chamber window, the mark on his arm pulsing faintly as he observed the courtyard below. His brother Klaus sat at one of the stone benches, sketching in the morning light. It wasn't a coincidence that this particular bench offered a clear view of Aurora de Martel's daily path to the chapel. Remembering how this all started, Pattia's voice drew his attention. She moved to stand beside him, her fingers intertwining with his. Indeed, he was. The memory was still clear, the night after they discovered the grimoires, when he'd pulled Klaus aside in their private chambers. They're collecting artifacts for Silas's followers, he had explained to his brother. We need to know more, and Aurora de Martel may be our key. She's vulnerable, lonely, susceptible to genuine attention. Klaus had laughed then. You want me to seduce her for information? Rather crude, isn't it, brother? Not seduce, Valley had corrected. Befriend. Court her properly. She's not some tavern maid to be charmed and discarded. She's our way into understanding what these followers are planning. He was banking on her already obvious infatuation with Niklaus alongside what he knew from the show and how deep her mad love would run for him, continuing even 1,000 years in the future. The first month had been carefully orchestrated. Klaus would accidentally encounter Aurora in the library, discussing art and poetry. He'd find her in the garden, sharing observations about the changing seasons. Each meeting planned, each conversation designed to build trust. But something unexpected had happened during the second month. The second month had revealed cracks in their carefully laid plans. Valley remembered the first sign clearly, a conversation with Klaus in the castle's training yard, away from prying ears. She's not what I expected, Klaus had admitted, absently turning a dagger in his hands. There's a depth to her suffering that mirrors something in me. When she speaks of her darkest thoughts, he had paused, struggling to find the words. You recognize yourself. Valley had finished for him, noting the conflicted expression on his brother's face. It wasn't just Klaus who was changing. Aurora's episodes of melancholy, which had once driven everyone away, began to lessen in his presence. Her smiles, once carefully practiced for court, became genuine when he was near. Tristan had noticed too. Valley could still recall the harvest feast during their third month, when Tristan had approached him in the shadows of the Great Hall. Your brother, Tristan had said quietly, watching Klaus lead Aurora in a dance. He make her laugh. Truly laugh. I haven't heard that sound since we were children. The present Aurora's voice drew Valley from his memories. She had appeared in the courtyard below, her red hair catching the morning light. Klaus immediately set aside his sketching, rising to greet her with a courtly bow that couldn't quite hide his genuine pleasure at her arrival. My lord, she curtsied, though her eyes held warmth that hadn't been there 3 months ago. They're no longer playing their parts, are they? Pattia observed, watching the couple below. No, Valley agreed, though Tristan still believes he can control this situation. His lips curved into a slightly tight smile. He whispers instructions to Aurora each morning. What information to seek, what secrets to uncover, as if love could be so easily directed. The door opened, admitting Lucien with his morning reports. Valley noted how his servant's eyes immediately found Aurora in the courtyard, lingering for a moment too long before he forced his attention away. This, too, had been unexpected because of his knowledge of the show, yet no less annoying of a development. Lucien's infatuation with Aurora had become increasingly obvious over the months, threatening to complicate their carefully balanced schemes. The scholars returned last night, my lord, Lucien reported, his voice carefully neutral despite the tension in his shoulders. They spent several hours with Lord Tristan, speaking of preparations for something they called the Awakening. Vala nodded, filing away this information. The mysterious scholars had maintained their pattern, appearing every few weeks, always under cover of darkness, always bearing new artifacts and cryptic prophecies. Valley watched the couple below for a moment longer before addressing Lucien, noting how his servant's gaze kept drifting back to Aurora despite his attempts at professionalism. "You've done well gathering this information," Valley said, his tone carrying a carefully measured mix of praise and authority. "Continue monitoring the scholars' movements, but focus on their interactions with the castle staff. The servants often see more than their masters realize." He turned to face Lucien fully, his black eyes holding the servant's gaze. "And Lucien, your attention would be better spent on your duties rather than Lady Aurora. She is beyond your reach in more ways than you understand." The subtle warning in his voice made Lucien stiffen slightly, though he maintained his composure. "Of course, my lord. I'll begin questioning the kitchen staff about the scholars' last visit. They often request specific meals and wines that might indicate their origins." "Good," Vala nodded, dismissing him with a wave. "Report anything unusual directly to me, no matter how insignificant it might seem." As Lucien left, Tadia's soft laugh drew Vala's attention. "You're getting better at handling him," she observed. "Much more subtle than your usual methods." "He's useful," Valley admitted, "but his infatuation with Aurora needs to be curbed before it becomes problematic. There are more important games being played here than a servant's unrequited love, especially since it is the original cause why he turned on the Mikaelsons in the original timeline. He'd rather not have to kill such an useful pawn." Below, Klaus had produced a small leather-bound book, presenting it to Aurora. Her delighted gasp carried clearly to their enhanced hearing. He had sketched her favorite flowers, capturing their delicate beauty in stark charcoal lines. "Your brother has quite the artistic soul," Tadia mused, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Indeed," Valley replied, watching as Aurora's fingers traced the drawings with obvious wonder. Though I doubt either of them realized how dangerous that soul would prove to be. He remembered his own warning to Klaus last week. "Be careful, brother. Love makes us vulnerable in ways that strength cannot protect against." Klaus had merely smiled, that new light in his eyes that appeared whenever Aurora was mentioned. "Perhaps vulnerability isn't always a weakness, brother." Now, watching them in the courtyard, Valley wondered if perhaps Klaus had been right. Aurora's genuine affection could prove more valuable than any forced manipulation. "And yet, you're considering something dark," Tadia observed, knowing her husband's expressions too well. "A contingency," he admitted mentally through their vampiric abilities. "A subtle compulsion, planted now but triggered later. After she leads us to what we need to know about these followers, it would make her leave Klaus. Clean, simple, with no risk of her unstable nature causing problems in the future. The same thing Elijah did in the original timeline, essentially. The more days passed, the more he saw the appeal of what his younger brother originally was supposed to do. Tadia turned to face him fully. "And you think that would solve anything? Love isn't so easily dismissed, even with compulsion. The pain would linger, affecting them both. I know this probably sounds hypocritical from me, but her madness makes her dangerous, and not in a good way." Valley countered, watching as Aurora laughed at something Klaus had said. "This connection to Silas's followers. We don't yet understand its full implications. She could be more deeply entwined in their plans than we realize. Or she could be as much their victim as anyone," Tadia suggested. "You've seen how they manipulate Tristan. Perhaps Aurora's instability is partly their doing." Valley considered this. Below, Klaus was showing Aurora another sketch, her delight evident in every movement. The genuine happiness on his brother's face gave him pause. A compulsion would be cleaner than letting this play out naturally, he mused. But you're right, it would leave scars. And Klaus, He'd never forgive me if he discovered it. Not to mention, Tadia added, manipulating them that way would make us no better than these scholars we're fighting against. The mark on his arm pulsed faintly, as if responding to the weight of the decision. After a moment, Valley shook his head. No, he decided. We'll let this play out naturally, but we'll watch carefully. Aurora's madness and these followers make her dangerous, not just to Klaus, but to everything we're building here. Down below, outside, Aurora's laugh echoed softly through the trees. Your art speaks volumes, my lord, she said, studying Klaus's sketches. You see far more than others dare to show. Klaus's smile held warmth beneath its careful restraint. Beauty often hides in shadows, my lady. One must simply know where to look. Tristan's footsteps announced his presence before he appeared between shelves. Sister, his voice carried the perfect blend of affection and authority. The evening gathering requires your presence. Our guests are particularly interested in discussing family histories. Aurora's fingers stilled over Klaus's drawings. How fortunate! Lord Niklaus was just sharing his own family's fascinating traditions. Indeed, Tristan's eyebrow raised slightly. Then perhaps you'd both honor us with your presence tonight. After all, shared knowledge can be so illuminating. From above in his chambers overlooking the library courtyard, Valley observed the exchange, Tadia's hand resting lightly on his arm. The mark pulsed faintly as he watched Tristan speak to Klaus. Your brother shows remarkable interest in our heritage, Tristan said as he looked above towards where Valley and Tadia were looking down upon them. Every word precisely chosen. As does your sister and ours, Klaus replied smoothly. Family traditions are such delicate things. Wouldn't you agree? Perhaps we should join them, Tadia suggested, no longer speaking mentally, already moving toward the door. After all, family discussions should include all interested parties. Vala nodded, offering her his arm as they made their way down the castle's winding stairs. Their unhurried pace was deliberate. Appearing too quickly would raise questions they preferred to avoid. They emerged into the courtyard just as Tristan finished speaking. Vala's timing was precise, his arrival carrying the weight of calculated coincidence. Speaking of family traditions, he said smoothly, I believe we share some fascinating parallels with the de Martels. Don't we, brother? Klaus's eyes met his, understanding the deeper meaning. Indeed, history has a way of repeating itself. How fortunate we are then, Aurora added, her smile perfectly poised, to have such knowledgeable guests in our home. Tristan's posture shifted slightly. A subtle tell that spoke volumes. Knowledge, after all, is power, though some secrets are best shared in more private settings. The evening's gathering should prove most enlightening, Tadia observed, her fingers tightening imperceptibly on Vala's arm. We look forward to learning more about your family's collections. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard as the five of them stood in their carefully maintained formation. Each were a move in a game where the stakes grew higher by the day. The scholars have quite particular tastes in literature, Tristan continued, gesturing toward the library. Perhaps you'd care to examine some of their recent recommendations? A generous offer, Valley replied, his black eyes studying Tristan with calculated interest. Though I find personal collections often tell more interesting stories than public ones. Aurora's laugh carried just the right note of tension beneath its melodic surface. Our family's library holds many treasures, some quite ancient in nature. Ancient things hold such power, Klaus observed, his hand brushing Aurora's ever so slightly, though sometimes their price proves steeper than expected. Tadia's fingers traced patterns on Vala's arm as she spoke. Power and price often walk hand in hand. Wouldn't you agree, Lord Tristan? Some prices are worth paying, Tristan responded, his eyes flickering between Klaus and Aurora. For the right cause. The mark on Vala's arm pulsed faintly, responding to the undercurrents of power in their conversation. Every word exchanged was a move in their elaborate game. Offers and threats wrapped in courtly pleasantries. Then perhaps, Vala suggested, we should discuss what causes we each find worthy of such investment. Over dinner, of course. 2 weeks had passed since the morning in the courtyard. The winter moon hung low and heavy over Castle de Martel, its silver light casting long shadows through the stone corridors. Aurora paced in her chambers, her fingers twisting nervously in her skirts as she waited. The scholars' preparations were nearly complete. Tonight, they would perform their ritual, the one Tristan had assured her would grant them power beyond measure. But something in their eyes when they spoke of the awakening filled her with a deep, instinctive dread. A soft knock at her door made her jump. She rushed to open it, relief flooding her features as Klaus slipped inside. "Nick," she breathed his name like a prayer, moving into his arms. "I was afraid you wouldn't come. I'll always come when you call," he murmured, his hand gently stroking her hair. But he could feel the tension in her frame, see the fear in her eyes. "What troubles you, my love?" Aurora pulled back slightly, her fingers clutching at his shirt. "They plan to do it tonight, in the old crypt beneath the eastern tower." Her voice dropped even lower. "Tristan says it will change everything, that the power they'll grant us will ensure our family's supremacy for generations." "But you don't believe them," Klaus observed softly, reading the doubt in her expression. "You haven't seen them, Nick. The way they look at us when they think we're not watching. Like we're nothing but tools to be used and discarded." Her voice cracked slightly. "The things they whisper in their ancient tongue. I don't understand the words, but the malice in them." She shuddered. "Tell me everything," Klaus urged gently, leading her to sit on the edge of her bed. "They brought new artifacts last night, things that make the very air feel wrong. And Tristan," her eyes filled with tears, "my brother is so consumed by their promises that he can't see what they're doing to him. To us." Aurora's fingers traced patterns on Klaus's chest as she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The ritual requires blood, Nick. Not just any blood. They speak of blood that carries ancient power. And the way they look at me sometimes." She shivered, like they're measuring my worth for something. Klaus's arms tightened around her protectively. Whatever connection Aurora's bloodline had to these followers, he intended to keep her safe from their machinations. "When does it begin?" he asked softly. "At midnight. They chose tonight because of some alignment they've been waiting for." Aurora's voice grew more urgent. "Nick, I'm telling you this because I trust you more than I fear them. But if Tristan knew..." "He won't know," Klaus assured her, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You've done the right thing, my love." "Have I?" Her laugh was brittle. "Betraying my own brother. You're trying to save him," Klaus corrected, "from powers he doesn't understand." Aurora pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. "Promise me something, Nick. Whatever happens tonight, protect him. He's still my brother, despite everything." Klaus's expression softened. "You have my word." Outside Aurora's chambers, hidden in the shadows, Lucien listened with growing unease. His loyalty to Valley warred with his feelings for Aurora, but in the end, there was only one choice. His lord needed to know about this immediately. The game was about to reach its climax, and blood would flow beneath the winter moon. In Vala's chambers, Tadia watched as her husband processed Lucien's report, the mark on his arm pulsing with unusual intensity. "The eastern crypt," Vala mused, his black eyes reflecting the candlelight. "An interesting choice. The old stones there hold power of their own." "My lord," Lucien added, his voice carefully steady. "They spoke of needing blood with ancient power." Lady Aurora seemed frightened by their interest in her. "The de Martels are descendants of travelers who witnessed Silas's entombment," Vala stated, more to himself than the others. "Their bloodline carries echoes of that ancient magic." "Should I inform your brothers?" Lucien asked. "No," Vala decided. "I don't wish for Niklaus to feel as if he's not being trusted. He will come to us himself." As if summoned by his words, Klaus's footsteps echoed in the corridor. Vala nodded to Lucien, who slipped away just as Klaus entered. "Brother," Klaus began, his expression grave. "We need to discuss tonight's activities. From how you're acting, I presume Aurora finally let you in completely and told you everything," Vala stated rather than asked, watching his brother's reaction carefully. Deep down, though, even though he hid it, he found something about this a bit off. "They mean to use her in some ritual in the eastern crypt," Klaus replied, tension evident in his frame. Something about her family's connection to ancient powers. I gave her my word that I would protect Tristan, but you fear that promise may complicate matters, Valley finished. The mark pulsed again, stronger this time. These scholars aren't acting as merely collectors anymore, are they? They're finally showing their true colors. Tadia moved to pour wine, her movements deliberately casual. The question is, do we stop them before the ritual begins, or do we wait to see what they're truly planning? We wait, Vala decided, his eyes meeting Klaus's. Let them begin their ritual. Let them reveal their true purpose. But brother, his voice carried a warning edge. Your feelings for Aurora cannot interfere with what needs to be done. I won't let them harm her, Klaus stated firmly, his voice rising with emotion. Whatever game you're playing, brother, Aurora isn't just another piece on your board. And that's precisely what concerns me, Valley countered, turning to face Klaus fully. Your feelings for her are making you reckless. We need to be strategic about this. Strategic? Klaus's laugh was sharp. While they prepare to use her blood for some dark ritual, while they manipulate her brother into madness. No, Valley. We end this now, and risk losing everything we've worked for? Vala's black eyes flashed with black veins. Think, brother. If we move too soon, we lose our chance to understand what they're truly planning. The ritual, their connection to Silas Dash. I don't care about Silas or his followers. Klaus snapped. Aurora trusted me with this information. She came to me for protection. She came to you because they wanted her to... Vala's voice carried an edge of frustration. Can't you see? Everything about this feels orchestrated. Or perhaps, Klaus stepped closer, his voice dropping dangerously. You're so obsessed with your schemes that you can't recognize genuine fear when you see it. Aurora isn't playing a part anymore, brother. Her terror is real. And what do you propose? Vala challenged, the mark pulsing stronger with his rising frustration. That we storm the crypt, reveal our true nature to everyone, and hope we can fight our way through whatever ancient magic they've prepared, all because Aurora batted her eyes and played on your protective instincts. Watch your tongue, brother, Klaus growled, his eyes flashing gold. You didn't see her fear. You haven't watched these past months as they've slowly tightened their grip on both her and Tristan. No, I've been watching everything else, Vala countered. The artifacts they've gathered, the power they're amassing. This isn't just about the DeMartels. Whatever they're planning, Dash, we'll get Aurora killed if we wait too long. Klaus interrupted. You speak of strategy, but I made her a promise. I won't stand back and watch while they dash. Enough. Tadia's voice cut through their argument. Both of you. This bickering serves no one. She moved between them, her expression stern. Valley, Klaus's concerns about Aurora are valid. And Klaus, your brother's caution about rushing and unprepared is equally so. The brothers stared at each other for a long moment before Vala spoke again. We won't let them harm her, brother. But we need to be smart about this. If we move too soon... He trailed off for a moment as he took a deep breath and sighed, calming himself. If we move too soon, they'll simply adapt their plans. Vala continued, his tone softening slightly at Klaus's obvious distress. And next time, we might not have Aurora's trust to warn us. Then what do you suggest? Klaus asked, still tense, but willing to listen. Because I won't leave her unprotected. We don't, Vala replied, moving to the window to observe the setting sun. But we make them think they have the upper hand. Let them believe their manipulations are working exactly as planned. You want to use Aurora's warning against them. Klaus realized, his expression conflicted. I want to use everything against them, Vala corrected. Their confidence, their assumptions about us, even their choice of location. The Eastern Crypt has only 3 exits, all easily monitored. And Aurora? Klaus pressed. What protection can we offer her if we're letting this ritual begin? The best kind. Vala turned back to his brother, the mark pulsing steadily now. They'll be so focused on watching you try to protect her, they won't notice what's really happening until it's too late. You're suggesting we let them think they've won, Tadia observed, understanding dawning in her eyes. For a moment, Vala agreed, just long enough for their guard to drop. But, brother, his black eyes met Klaus's. This only works if your reaction to Aurora's danger is convincing. They need to believe you're acting purely on emotion. You want me to play the desperate lover, Klaus said slowly, understanding dawning. While I ensure they never leave that crypt, Vala finished. But for this to work, your concern for Aurora needs to blind you to everything else, at least in their eyes. That won't be difficult to fake. Klaus's voice carried an edge. Considering I am genuinely concerned. Good. Use that. Vale moved closer, lowering his voice. But brother, understand this. If things go wrong, if the ritual progresses too far, you'll do whatever needs to be done, Klaus finished, tension returning to his frame. Regardless of promises I've made to Aurora about protecting her brother. Would you prefer I lie to you? Valley asked quietly. Tell you everything will work out perfectly? That we can save everyone. The brothers stared at each other for a long moment before Klaus spoke again. No, but Valley, give me a chance to save them both before you resort to more permanent solutions. You'll have until midnight, Valley agreed, the mark pulsing as if in response to the weight of his words. After that, we do things my way. Tadia watched this exchange with careful eyes. And what are the others? Elia Golfin. We'll need Elijah and Cole near the crypt, Vala stated, his fingers tracing the rim of his wine goblet. The scholars have been watching us all, categorizing us, thinking they understand our family's dynamics. His lips curved into a cold smile. They see what they expect to see, myself and Tristan as the calculating ones, you and Aurora as the passionate fools in love. The rest of our family? Mere background players like the Count himself. Indeed, my dear husband has been quite busy. They've cast him as the monster pulling strings while you dear brother-in-law play the lovesick noble, Tadia observed, her tone amused. Though I must say, Nick, you've played your part admirably. This isn't entirely an act, Klaus replied, though his expression remained troubled. But brother, getting Elijah and Cole in position without raising suspicion. The scholars watch every move we make. Which is precisely why their presence won't seem suspicious at all. Vala's black eyes gleamed with dark amusement. After all, what could be more natural than Elijah's diplomatic maneuvering or Cole's scholarly curiosity about new artifacts? Lucian, Vala called softly, knowing his servant was waiting nearby. Tell Lord Elijah that the Count has concerns about tonight's protocols regarding our scholarly guests. And inform Lord Cole that the artifacts being moved to the crypt might be of particular interest to his studies. They should understand what I mean by these words. As Lucian departed, Tadia moved to stand beside her husband, her fingers trailing along his arm where the mark pulsed steadily. It is still quite hilarious if you think about it. These so-called men of knowledge, priding themselves on their intelligence, thinking they're so clever, manipulating everyone into position, and yet they don't realize they're the ones being played. Unless they do, Klaus countered. We're not the only ones capable of deception, sister. If they suspect, they suspect exactly what we want them to, Vala interrupted. I already told you. They believe they understand our family's fractures, our weaknesses. You driven by love, me by power, our siblings by their own petty interests. I have made sure of that. Now stop doubting me. I don't like repeating myself. Klaus was silent for a moment before he ran his hand over his face, through his hair with a sigh. And what do they think drives Aurora? Klaus continued to then ask, his voice carrying an edge. Fear, Vala replied simply. Fear and devotion to her brother, to you. They're counting on it, which is why, brother, when you return to her, you must let her believe you're acting alone. Her fear must be genuine. Klaus's jaw tightened. You're asking me to manipulate her. I'm asking you to keep her alive, Vala corrected. The more convincing her terror, the less likely they are to suspect our true plans. Fine, but now tell me, beyond keeping everyone in the crypt, Klaus pressed, studying his brother carefully. What exactly are you planning, Valley? This obsession with Silas and his followers. I've noticed how you act whenever it comes up. I'm not a fool, brother. I know you well enough to see that whatever you are planning is more than just about breaking our curse. Isn't it? Valley was silent for a moment, his black eyes reflecting the dying sunlight. The mark pulsed steadily on his arm as he considered how much to reveal. The curse is part of it, he finally said. But these travelers, these followers of Silas, they're connected to something older, something that calls to this. He gestured to the mark. I can feel the draw growing stronger with each artifact they bring into the castle. The mark responds to power, Tadia observed quietly, to challenges worthy of its nature. And Silas represents the ultimate challenge. Valley agreed, his voice carrying an edge of dark anticipation. The first immortal, a being of power that may match what I've become. Klaus's eyes narrowed. So this isn't just about protecting our family or breaking the curse. You want to face him. I want to understand what we're truly dealing with, Vala corrected, though he couldn't deny it. The sensations he's been getting from the mark the closer he got to this ritual makes him believe that the mark somehow has a connection to it, which he knows isn't impossible. For the moment he was born into this world, he was put into its framework, its laws applying to him. These followers, their rituals, the power they're gathering, it's all building to something bigger than just the DeMartels or their bloodline. Silas, as I just said, may be a possible threat. Niklaus, you've heard the stories yourself when we were children. How he was once the mightiest which to walk the earth, nature's chosen, but now its greatest shame. No longer one honored by nature, fallen, a disgrace. The first sinner. Silas is said to be able to bring the end of days. And seeing as we are a mortal brother, I don't want the world to end, since it is my ambition to one day rule it. Vala continued. Vala, since remembering everything and doing his own research about Silas, through his mother's grimoire and what he found from the travelers, has already noticed that the first immortal is possibly far more powerful than he was originally supposed to be. Something the paranoid bastard that he is will thoroughly take into account when it comes to dealing with him. And how are you possibly going to accomplish that by facing him, since you still don't deny it? Klaus questioned. Brother, these scholars are most definitely not the only ones seeking to raise the bastard. His rise is practically guaranteed. What we need to do now is delay it as much as possible till I have more understanding of what my connection to him is, so that I then can permanently end him. With this, Valley says as he pulls out the first blade from his inner breast pocket. Klaus immediately flinches at its appearance, for every raw nerve end of his tells him to flee at its sight. Tells him to run and never look back, for this can end him. The hybrid soon enough regains his composure as Valley once more puts it away, masking its aura once more. Fine, but what about Aurora? About Tristan? Are they people you are willing to see as allies and actually take into consideration in this quest, or do you see them as simply justified casualties of war? Klaus questioned, his tone demanding they're whatever they choose to be. Valley replied coldly. Either obstacles to be removed or allies to be protected. Tonight will determine which. The air within Castle de Martel was charged with an electric tension as midnight approached. Shadows deepened in the corridors, and a winter moon hung like a silent sentinel over the ancient stones. The time had come for the ritual that had been whispered about in hushed tones and fearful glances. In the crypt beneath the eastern tower, the scholars moved with an eerie precision, their robes trailing behind them like shadows of their own. Ancient symbols, drawn in blood, glowed faintly on the stone floor, pulsing in tandem with the arcane energy that filled the room. Tristan stood at the center, his eyes alight with fervor. He believed this ritual would elevate his family, grant them power beyond measure. Aurora, her movements guided by subtle memory manipulation, stood beside him, her expression a mix of fear and resignation. From the shadows, Valley and Klaus observed, their presence hidden but senses heightened. Elijah and Cole, positioned strategically near the crypt's entrances, were ready to intercept any attempt at escape. The tension in the air was palpable, every second ticking down to the moment of truth. The scholars began their incantations, their voices rising and falling in a haunting cadence. The air vibrated with their power, and the artifacts around the crypt resonated with an ancient song that set Vala's mark alight. Klaus's gaze was fixed on Aurora, his heart pounding in time with the ritual's rhythm. He knew his moment was approaching, the time to act the desperate lover, to create the distraction that would allow Valley and the others to strike. Tristan, Aurora's voice wavered, breaking through the chanting. Are you sure about this? The power they promise. It feels wrong. Tristan's eyes met hers, filled with zeal and a hint of something darker. This is our destiny, sister. Our family's legacy. We were chosen for this. But at what cost? Aurora's voice was barely a whisper, a plea that cut through the ritual's intensity. The scholars continued their incantations, the energy building to a crescendo. Klaus felt the pull of his own emotions, the urge to protect, Aurora battling with the knowledge of what needed to be done. Stay strong. Vala's voice was a low murmur beside him, a reminder of their shared purpose. The moment is nearly here. As the ritual reached its peak, the symbols on the floor blazed with light, and the air crackled with raw power. Klaus knew it was time. He stepped forward, his voice ringing out with desperate urgency. "Aurora," he called, his tone layered with genuine concern. "This isn't you. They're using you for their own ends." The scholars' chanting faltered, their attention momentarily diverted by Klaus's unexpected intrusion. It was the opening Vala had been waiting for. With a nod to Elijah and Cole, he signaled the attack. The brothers moved with supernatural speed, their presence a sudden force of nature within a crypt. Elijah's diplomacy gave way to lethal precision, while Cole's curiosity transformed into deadly intent. The scholars, caught off guard, struggled to maintain their hold on the ritual's power. But even as they fought back, the ancient energy they had unleashed began to spiral out of control. "Fools!" One of the scholars spat, deflecting an attack from Elijah. "You cannot stop what has already begun." "The blood of the DeMartels is the key," another scholar hissed, parrying Cole's strike. "Their sacrifice will awaken the power we seek." Klaus's rage boiled over as he fought his way toward Aurora, who stood frozen, her eyes pleading with him. But before he could reach her, one of the scholars bound both siblings with a spell, drawing blades across their wrists and necks. "No!" Klaus's voice was a roar of fury and desperation, his eyes blazing with golden light. But the scholar's magic held him back, the ritual's power acting as both shield and sword. The blood of the de Martel siblings mingled on the stone floor, fueling the ritual's dark energy. The air shimmered with supernatural force as the scholars redoubled their efforts, chanting with renewed fervor. A surge of power erupted from the symbols on the floor, and surprising all, it headed towards Valley. "What is going on?" Valley, he thought with frantic worry. As the blinding light charged towards him, he only pushing it back with the darkness of the mark. "Valley!" Elijah roared as the light pierced through the darkness, to the shock of all, and enveloped the demon in blinding light as he roared. In an instant, the crypt was transformed into a maelstrom of light and shadow. The scholars' voices rose to a fevered pitch, their incantations weaving a web of ancient power that crackled through the air. Klaus's heart clenched as he watched his brother disappear into the radiance. The sight of the de Martel siblings bleeding on the floor, their lifeblood fueling the ritual, only heightened his desperation. He fought against the magic that held him back, his eyes blazing with a feral intensity. "Stay focused," Cole shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "We can't let them complete the ritual." But even as Klaus and the others struggled to regain control, the scholars pressed on, their eyes alight with a fanatic zeal. The blood of the de Martels was the key, flowing in rivulets across the stone floor, feeding the ritual's insatiable hunger. And then, in the heart of the light, Valley found himself standing in a vast, empty expanse that seemed to stretch into infinity. It was a place that was the very definition of silence, a place where the laws of the universe seemed bendable. Before him, he recognized in shock stood Silas, in his true form, the perfect reflection of Stefan Salvatore from the future. He stood there, just a small distance between them, his presence commanding, his eyes filled with the weight of centuries. "Welcome, Prince of Darkness," Silas intoned, his voice, even though with his close, still echoing as if from a great distance. "We have much to discuss, you and I." The mark on Vala's arm pulsed with a dark anticipation, the challenge it craved standing before him in the form of the first immortal. The game they had all been playing was about to take on a new dimension, one that could reshape the balance of power itself. The crypt's turmoil faded into the background, leaving only Valley and Silas in their ethereal confrontation. The true nature of the ritual, the scholar's machinations, and the fate of the DeMartells all hung in the balance as Valley prepared to face his greatest challenge yet. The endless white expanse stretched in all directions, reality itself seeming to bend and warp at its edges. Valley stood motionless, his black eyes fixed on Silas, the mark on his arm pulsing with an almost eager intensity. "Prince of Darkness," Silas repeated, his lips curving into a knowing smile. "That's what they call you on the other side. The demon who bears the mark of death itself. And you're the first sinner," Valley replied evenly, though his mind raced. "The one who dared steal immortality from nature." Silas laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the void. "Steal? I earned it, just as you earned your mark." He gestured to Vala's arm. "We're not so different, you and I, both willing to defy the natural order for power. The difference is," Vala's voice carried a dangerous edge, "I never pretended my actions were noble. You wrapped your theft in love, convinced yourself it was justified, and your love for your family justifies nothing." Silas countered smoothly. "We all tell ourselves stories to sleep at night, Prince. Even demons." The mark flared crimson as Valley took a step forward. "Why am I here? What was the true purpose of this ritual?" "To talk." Silas spread his hands in an almost casual gesture. "To show you what's coming. The scholars believe they're working to free me, but they're merely pawns in a much larger game. A game you seem eager to include me in," Valley observed, his eyes narrowing. "Why?" "Because you're the variable no one expected." Silas's expression grew more serious. "The mark you bear, it changes everything. The balance nature thought it had maintained is crumbling." Seeing Vala's silence, ushering for him to continue, Silas began speaking once more. "The balance," Silas continued, his voice taking on an almost reverent tone, "was already fragile before your arrival. When he left, everything began to crack." Vala's expression sharpened. "God," Silas stated simply, the word hanging heavy in the void. "The Creator abandoned his creation, left us to our own devices. The principal guardians still maintain their watch, playing at being divine authority, but they're nothing but abandoned children clinging to old orders." The mark pulsed stronger as Vala processed this revelation. This wasn't just the world he'd known from stories. This was something far more complex, more dangerous. The guardians, Vala tested the word carefully. "The ones who serve as heaven's warriors?" Silas's laugh was bitter. "Serve heaven? They serve nothing but their own interpretation of divine will. Even Satan, the greatest of their number, merely plays at rebellion. They're all just filling the void he left behind. And you?" Vala pressed. "Where do you fit in this abandoned creation?" "I was nature's chosen." Silas's eyes blazed with ancient pride. "The most powerful which to walk the earth, honored by nature itself. But I saw the truth. With God gone, humans hold the greatest potential. We're not bound by divine purpose or natural law. We can become anything. So you stole immortality," Vala concluded, pieces falling into place. "Not just for love, but because you saw an opportunity." "I saw reality," Silas corrected. "Without him, the natural order is merely suggestion. The guardians, demons, even nature itself, they're all just powers to be challenged and overcome. You understand this, don't you? Your mark proves it." Vala's black eyes gleamed as understanding dawned. This world was far larger, far more dangerous than he'd imagined. Novel and show had merged, creating something new, something where even heaven waited to be claimed. "And now," Valley asked, his voice carrying an edge of dark anticipation. "Now," Silas smiled, "we stand at the precipice of change. The guardians sense it. Satan watches with growing interest. And you, Prince of Darkness, you're the wild card none of them expected." The mark blazed brighter as Silas stepped closer. "They fear you, you know. The spirits whisper about the demon who bears the mark of death, who kills without remorse yet loves with unshakable loyalty. The perfect contradiction. Is that why you brought me here? To warn me about celestial politics. I brought you here, Silas's voice dropped lower, to offer you a choice. The world is changing, Prince. The old powers are stirring. When I break free, and I will break free, everything will change. You can either stand with me in reshaping this godless world, or Vala's tone was dangerous. Or you can stand against me, Silas finished simply. But know this, your mark makes you unique, powerful, immortal, truly so, beyond even mine. But do keep in mind, that does not make you invincible. After all, even immortals can be defeated. You bore me, Valis suddenly stated, his eyes looking hollow. What makes you believe you will even have the opportunity to achieve anything? What makes you think that I will ever allow you to step foot upon my world? Silas, at his words, smiled. Because you'll be the one to make sure I rise. Valley raised an eyebrow at his words as he crossed his arms. Now why would I do that? Because without me, your eternity will become dull. Vala laughed at his words. Dull? Please, there's an entire world out there filled with wealthy and glory for me to obtain, pleasures to experience, armies to crush, lands to conquer. Believe me, you will not even be a thought in a century or two. Silas's smile turned knowing, almost predatory. You doubt my words? Then let me show you something, Prince. He waved his hand, and the white void filled with echoing voices, shifting images. A battle-worn warrior, blood streaming from countless wounds. They tell stories of your amazing strength, how you glide through oceans of blood. Beyond human, a monster whose powers radiate with a darkness that casts a shadow on darkness itself. A demon lord, eyes blazing with challenge. Finally, I get to know, once and for all, if there's anything more to you than rumor. An ancient witch, her voice trembling. Your body is no longer that of a human, neither is your soul. The images shifted, faster now, each one showing Vala potential futures, paths not taken. A guardian, wings spread in defiance, as Vala tells her. Your unshaken mercy for others is a sign of weakness. A vampire lord, bowing in defeat. No matter what the rest of us do, really, we're all just chasing your shadow. You see, Silas's voice cut through the cascade of visions. This is what awaits you. Endless victory without true challenge. You've left many great fighters beaten, unable to match your unshakable victor's mentality. You know you're the strongest. You know you're the greatest. And no one has ever proven otherwise. The mark pulsed as more voices filled the expanse. I feared you. The stories anyway. A fallen angel states. Valas began to echo as well. Your lack of control over your body leaves something to be desired. What kind of idiot loses twice in one day? Vale mutters disgusted, looking down at his son. His mental capacity is far stronger than any muscle on his frame. For it is unquestionably his mind that convinces his body it is stronger than any man or beast he may face. A scholar observes, wait, the Green Berets? The SEALs? Both of them wiped out. A hybrid military commander roars in question. If I may, I believe we should retreat. We've lost enough good men already. I don't believe his objective is to fight us, sir. I think he just sees us as being in his way. A general states. A warrior's dying words. Vala's strikes are faster than any blade, faster than any fist. Vala's own battle cry as he turned to Tadia, his son beaten on the floor. Come on, let's take his heart out. An ancient being's assessment. A perfect body, one that has been pushed well beyond its limits, with the reactions and strength of a dragon, the speed of an angel, the plasticity of a gorgon, and the stamina and endurance of a phoenix. His own philosophy echoing. Only by death is a true warrior defeated. Only by death is a true victor crowned. The future Vala's voice, arriving at a battlefield. Good, just in time. Looks like you've had a chance to warm up. The visions faded, leaving them in the white void once more. Silas's eyes bore into Vala's with an intensity that seemed to pierce through time itself. This is your fate without me, Silas said softly. Eternal strength without true challenge. Victory without satisfaction. You'll spend eternity wondering what might have been, haunted by the knowledge that you turned away from the one being who could truly test your limits. The mark pulsed stronger, responding to the truth in Silas's words. The promise of ultimate challenge, of finally meeting someone who could push him to his absolute limits, was intoxicating. Think about it, Silas continued. Every victory will feel hollow, knowing you avoided the greatest battle of all. Every triumph will be shadowed by doubt. Could you have defeated me? Were you strong enough? You'll never know, because you chose the safer path. Vala's black eyes narrowed as the weight of this possible future settled over him. The mark burned with anticipation, with hunger for the challenge Silas represented. You will let the seals break, Silas stated with absolute certainty. There's no question about it. You'll be there when I rise to face me at my full strength. Or if not, you'll spend eternity regretting your cowardice. The void began to shimmer, reality preparing to reassert itself. But before it did, Silas left Valley with one final thought. Remember, Prince of Darkness, in a world without God, the only true sin is refusing to reach for ultimate power. Don't let fear of what I might be keep you from discovering what you could become. The white expanse shattered like glass, and Valley found himself back in the crypt, the energies of the ritual still swirling around him. But now he was left with speeding thoughts as he processed what he saw and heard. The mark pulsed steadily on his arm, a constant reminder of the choice that lay before him. Silas's words echoed in his mind, promises of ultimate challenge warring with the calculated risks of freeing such a being. The first sinner had shown him visions of a hollow eternity, of victories without meaning, of power without true purpose. But as he stood in the blood-soaked crypt, surrounded by the corpses of Silas's followers, a testament to his brother's victory, a cold smile began playing across his lips. For who is to say which path would truly lead to satisfaction? Will he make Silas's words true, or will he let him rot for an eternity evermore? Only time would tell, and time was something they both had in abundance. The ritual's energy dissipated, leaving the crypt in eerie silence. Blood pooled beneath the de Martel siblings, their skin growing paler with each passing moment. Aurora, Klaus whispered, gathering her into his arms. Her eyes fluttered open weakly as he bit into his wrist, pressing it to her lips. Drink, my love, please. Aurora's fingers brushed his cheek, leaving trails of blood. I'm cold, Nick, she whispered, her voice barely audible. So cold. Just drink, he urged, desperation creeping into his voice. You'll be warm again, I promise. Her lips curved into a faint smile. I loved you, she breathed. Truly loved you. Aurora, please dash. But her eyes had already glazed over, her hand falling limply to her side. Beside them, Elijah worked frantically to feed Tristan his blood, but the elder de Martel had already gone still, his eyes fixed sightlessly on the crypt ceiling. It's not working. Elijah's voice cut through the silence. Brother, they're not turning. Klaus clutched Aurora's body closer, his grief turning to rage. No, he snarled. No, she can't. We gave them our blood. They should be turning. The crypt fell silent save for Klaus's ragged breathing. The ritual symbols still glowed faintly on the floor, casting an otherworldly light over the scene of devastation. Klaus's head snapped up, his eyes blazing gold as he turned toward Valley. Ew, he snarled, gently laying Aurora's body down before lunging at his brother. You knew this would happen. Vala didn't resist as Klaus slammed him against the crypt wall, stones cracking under the impact. You stood there, talking to thin air while they bled out. You could have stopped this sooner. Knee Klaus, Elijah warned, but Klaus's grip only tightened on Vala's throat. What did you see? Klaus demanded, his voice raw with grief and fury. What was so important that you let her die? That you let them both die? Brother, Vala's voice remained calm despite Klaus's grip. What happened here was already in motion long before we arrived. The ritual dash. I don't care about the ritual. Klaus roared. Aurora is dead. The woman I love is dead because you were too busy playing your games with ancient powers. The mark pulsed steadily as Valen met Klaus's rage-filled eyes. And what would you have had me do, brother? Rush in blindly? Let the ritual's power tear this place apart with all of us in it. You could have saved her, Klaus's voice cracked. You could have. His grip loosened as the full weight of loss crashed over him. Behind them, Elijah stood guard over the DeMartels' bodies, his own expression torn between grief for his siblings' pain and concern for what this loss would mean for their family. She's gone, Klaus whispered, stepping back from Valley. She's really gone. Klaus turned back to Aurora's body, his movements almost mechanical as he knelt beside her. His fingers traced her cold cheek, smearing the blood that had dried there. We need to move them, Elijah said quietly, ever practical even in tragedy. The Count will expect his children to appear at court. Questions will be asked. Let them ask. Klaus's voice was hollow. Let them all burn for what happened here and reveal what we are. Elijah pressed. Brother, we cannot what? Klaus whirled on him, eyes still blazing. Cannot avenge them? Cannot make these followers of Silas pay for what they've done? They're already dead, Valley observed coldly, gesturing to the scholars' corpses littering the crypt floor. Your rage has nowhere to go, brother. Klaus's laugh was bitter, bordering on hysterical. Nowhere to go. Oh, I think I know exactly where to direct it. His gaze fixed on Valley again. You spoke to him, didn't you? To Silas? What did he offer you that was worth their lives? The mark pulsed as Valley met his brother's accusation with silence. Around them, the ritual's symbols had begun to fade, their power spent, leaving only darkness and the metallic scent of blood. We should burn the scholars' bodies, Elijah interjected, trying to redirect their focus. And the DeMartels, they deserve better than this crypt. They deserve to live, Klaus snapped, but his fury was beginning to crack, revealing the raw grief beneath. He gathered Aurora's body in his arms once more, cradling her as if she might still wake. She deserved to live. The crypt's shadows seemed to deepen as Klaus rose, Aurora's limp form cradled against his chest. His eyes, still gleaming with unshed tears and barely contained rage, fixed on Valley. Whatever game you're playing, brother, Klaus's voice was dangerously soft. Whatever cosmic chess match you've entered with Silas, remember this moment. Remember her face. Because if I discover that you could have prevented this, you'll what? Vala's response was equally quiet, but carried an edge that made even Elijah tense. Kill me? Join Silas yourself? Your grief makes you reckless, Niklaus. My grief makes me see clearly, Klaus snarled. You're so caught up in your schemes, in your pursuit of power, that you've forgotten what it means to love. Have I? Vala's black eyes flickered briefly to where Tadia would be waiting above. Or perhaps I simply understand that love makes us vulnerable in ways that power cannot protect against. Klaus's grip tightened on Aurora's body. Save your philosophy. She's dead because of whatever happened here, whatever you saw. That's the only truth that matters. For now, Valen murmured, so softly it might have been imagined. Elijah moved to lift Tristan's body, his movements careful and dignified even in this grim task. We need to leave. Dawn approaches, and we must decide how to handle this situation. Handle it. Klaus's laugh was hollow. How do you suggest we handle the deaths of the Count's children, brother? Shall we compose a pretty speech about tragic accidents? We do what we must, Elijah replied firmly. As we always have. As they prepared to leave the crypt, Klaus paused at the entrance, Aurora's blood staining his fine clothes. This isn't over, he said, not turning to face Valley. Whatever you saw, whatever Silas showed you, it better have been worth their lives. Valley remained silent as his brothers ascended with their burdens. The mark pulsed steadily on his arm as he surveyed the carnage one final time before they made their way. The journey back through the castle's corridors was a grim procession. Klaus and Elijah carried their precious burdens while Vala followed, his black eyes scanning the shadows for any witnesses to their macabre parade. Tadia met them at the top of the stairs, her expression shifting from anticipation to horror as she saw who they carried. What happened? She whispered, moving to Vala's side. The ritual failed, Klaus bit out before Vala could respond. Or succeeded, depending on who you ask. His bitter gaze flickered to his brother. We need somewhere secure, Elijah interjected, ever focused on immediate concerns. Somewhere to place them until we decide how to proceed. Mine and Vala's chambers, Tadia offered immediately. The servants never enter without permission, and I can ensure privacy. As they moved through the darkened halls, Klaus's grief seemed to radiate from him in waves. Every few steps, his eyes would drop to Aurora's face, as if hoping to see some sign of life, some indication that their blood might still work. In the chambers, they laid the de Martel siblings on separate chaises, arranging them with care that seemed almost absurd given the circumstances. Aurora's red hair spilled across the velvet like spilled wine, while Tristan's noble features had settled into an expression of eternal surprise. "Leave us," Klaus commanded, his voice rough. When no one moved, he turned, his eyes wild. "I said leave." Elijah hesitated, but Tadia touched his arm gently. "Cool me. There are arrangements we must make, explanations to prepare." As they filed out, Valley lingered for a moment in the doorway. The mark pulsed steadily as he watched his brother sink to his knees beside Aurora's body. "Brother," he began, but Klaus cut him off. "Don't." His voice was barely a whisper. "Whatever wisdom you think you have, whatever justification you've crafted, I don't want to hear it. Not now." The door closed softly, leaving Klaus alone with his grief and the cooling bodies of the de Martel siblings. Outside, Valis stood motionless, listening to his brother's quiet sobs begin to fill the chamber. Dawn began to creep over Castle de Martel, its pale light finding no warmth in the stone halls. In Tadia's chambers, Klaus hadn't moved from his vigil, his hands still clasping Aurora's cold fingers. The door opened softly, revealing Lucien. His face was ashen as he took in the scene. "My lord," he addressed Klaus hesitantly. "The Count, he's asking for his children. The morning court will begin soon." Klaus didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge Lucien's presence. His thumb traced circles on Aurora's palm, as if trying to warm it through sheer will. "Leave him." Elijah's voice came from the doorway. "We'll handle the Count. And what exactly will you tell him?" Klaus finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "What pretty lies will you spin about his children's fate?" "Whatever we must," Elijah replied steadily. "We've hidden bodies before, brother. We'll hide them." Klaus's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Like common murders to be buried in unmarked graves? No, she deserves better. They both do." "Then what would you suggest?" Elijah asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be rational. Klaus finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but burning with intensity. "We tell him the truth. Let him know what his trust in these scholars cost him. Let him feel the weight of his children's blood on his hands." "You know we can't," Elijah began, but Klaus cut him off. "Can't what? Can't reveal ourselves? Can't risk exposure?" His voice rose with each word. "Look at them, brother. Look what secrets and schemes have already cost us." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Lucien's nervous shifting. The servant's eyes kept darting to Aurora's body, his own grief evident but carefully contained. Outside the chamber, Vala listened to the exchange, the mark pulsing steadily on his arm. He waited for a moment longer before he entered, shattering the silence as he spoke. "I will compel the Count," Vala stated, his voice carrying no room for argument. "A tragic accident while riding. The bodies lost to the river. Simple, clean. Simple?" Klaus's head snapped up, rage replacing grief in his eyes. "You want to erase them? Make it as if they never existed. I want to protect this family. The world must not yet become suspicious of the existence of creatures of the night." Valley countered coldly. "Your grief is making you act imprudent, brother." "My grief?" Klaus rose slowly, his voice trembling with fury. "My grief exists because you stood there, lost in whatever vision Silas granted you, while they bled out, while she died. And what would you have had me do?" Vala's black eyes narrowed. "Rush in blindly? Act when we do not understand the ancient powers at play? Let the ritual possibly tear this entire castle apart?" "I would have had you care," Klaus roared. "But you can't, can you? The mighty Prince of Death, too caught up in his games of power to notice the blood on his hands." Klaus's rage exploded as he charged forward, throwing a punch that Valley easily deflected. "You're no better than mother." always scheming, always plotting, using everyone around you as pieces in your game. He attacked again, more viciously. You probably planned this, didn't you? Letting Aurora die to push me toward whatever path suits your purposes. The mark pulsed as Valley dodged another strike. Careful, brother. Your grief makes you speak foolishness. Foolishness. Klaus laughed bitterly, launching another assault. You've been manipulating us from the start. The ritual, Silas, all of it. We're just pawns to you, aren't we? Even your own family. He managed to land a glancing blow, though Valley barely seemed to notice. You stand there, acting superior, pretending your darkness makes you wise, but you're nothing but a monster playing at being a god. Enough. Vala's voice was soft, dangerous. But Klaus was beyond hearing. You let her die. You let them both die because it suited your plans. Your precious mark, your games with Silas. It's made you nothing but a creature who dash. The rest of his words cut off as Vala moved, faster than thought. His hand closed around Klaus's throat, lifting him off the ground with terrible ease. The mark throbbed with anticipation. Dark veins spread around Vala's eyes, now pools of bottomless black. A creature. Vala's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm what I need to be to keep this family alive. Your love for Aurora has blinded you to the larger game being played. Klaus struggled, his hybrid strength useless against Vala's grip. She deserved better. He choked out, still trying to fight. We all deserved better than your manipulations. Perhaps, Valley agreed, his black eyes boring into Klaus's. But your rage won't bring her back. Your accusations won't change what happened here. And your grief. He tightened his grip slightly. Your grief doesn't give you the right to question my methods. He slammed Klaus into the ground with enough force to crack the stone floor. I have endured your tantrum out of love, brother. But do not mistake my patience for weakness. Klaus tried to rise, spitting blood. You don't know what love is anymore. The mark has burned it out of you, left nothing but ambition and dash. Vala's foot pressed down on his chest, pinning him. I know enough to understand that blind love makes us weak. Your current state proves that rather effectively, doesn't it? He released the pressure, stepping back as Klaus gasped for air. I will compel the count. He repeated, his tone final. And you, brother, will remember that your position in this family doesn't protect you from consequences. Klaus remained on the floor, his breath coming in ragged gasps, as Elijah ran towards his side. The fight had drained from him, leaving only the hollow ache of loss. Now, Vala continued, his voice softening slightly. You can either help maintain this family's safety, or you can let your emotions destroy everything we've built. Choose wisely, brother. The mark pulsed steadily as he turned to leave, pausing only briefly at the door. And me, Klaus? When you're done wallowing in your grief, remember, death isn't always as final as it seems. He left Klaus there, lying beside Aurora's body, the weight of choices and consequences hanging heavy in the air. Cold. That was my first sensation as consciousness returned, a bone-deep chill that seemed to permeate my very essence. Opening my eyes, I found myself standing in a vast gray expanse, the world around me like a negative image of reality. Aurora? Tristan's voice drew my attention. My brother stood beside me, looking as lost as I felt. Where are we? The other side, I whispered, remembering stories our scholars had told. The realm of the dead. We began walking, though direction seemed meaningless here. Shapes moved in the distance, other spirits, I realized. They kept their distance, watching us with hollow eyes that seemed to glow in the perpetual twilight. The landscape shifted as we walked, revealing secrets no living eye was meant to see. Ancient spirits drifted past us like smoke, some human, others decidedly not. I saw a woman made of starlight weeping black tears that turned to butterflies. A warrior whose wounds leaked golden light fought eternally against shadows that wore his own face. Look, Tristan whispered, pointing to our right. A vast city rose from the mist, its architecture impossible. Buildings that spiraled upward without end, streets that folded in on themselves like paper origami. Spirits moved through its twisted corridors, some looking as lost as we felt, others moving with terrible purpose. The dead have their own civilization, I murmured, watching as a procession of robed figures passed through a wall that rippled like water. We saw more as we continued. A garden where the flowers screamed silently, their petals bleeding memories into the gray air. A battlefield where ancient warriors fought their last battles over and over, their weapons passing harmlessly through each other as they repeated their final moments. In one clearing, we found a circle of children playing a game with dice made from starlight. They looked up as we passed, their eyes too old for their young faces. One smiled at me, revealing teeth like shattered mirrors. "Don't look too long," Tristan warned, pulling me away. "Nothing here is quite what it seems." He was right. The longer we walked, the more I realized this place operated on its own rules. Time seemed to move strangely. Sometimes we seemed to walk for hours and moments. Other times a single step took years. We passed a pool of silver liquid where spirits gathered to watch reflections of the living world. I caught a glimpse of Nick kneeling beside my body, his grief palpable even through the veil between worlds. My heart ached at the sight. The traveler's blood. Tristan mused as we continued. It must be why we can see so much. Why we're not just fading away. Before I could respond, we crested a hill and found ourselves overlooking a vast amphitheater carved from black stone. Spirits gathered there in countless numbers, watching as two massive beings fought with weapons that tears holes in reality itself. The wars of gods and monsters. A passing spirit informed us, his form flickering like candlelight. They've been fighting since before recording had true meaning. We saw more wonders and horrors as we walked. A forest of crystalline trees that sang mournful songs in languages long dead. A desert made of memories where each grain of sand contained a life's worth of experiences. A sea of shadows where leviathans of pure darkness swam beneath the surface. "Do you hear that?" I asked Tristan, pausing as a strange melody drifted through the gray air. It sounded like singing, but the notes twisted in ways that made my essence shiver. We followed the sound to its source. A gathering of spirits around what appeared to be a crack in reality itself. Through it, golden light spilled out, and voices spoke in tongues that made my thoughts blur. "Principal guardians," Tristan breathed, recognition flickering in his eyes. The scholars spoke of them, heaven's warriors. Through the crack, I caught glimpses of beings of pure light, their wings made of burning gold and eyes like constellations. They were discussing something in those impossible languages, their voices making the very fabric of the other side tremble. We moved on, passing through a valley where memories floated like autumn leaves. I caught fragments as they drifted by, a first kiss, a last breath, a moment of triumph, a crushing defeat. Each memory carried the weight of the life that had lived it. "Aurora," Tristan called softly, pointing to our left. A group of spirits had gathered around what looked like a window into the living world. Through it, I could see Castle de Martel, but not as we knew it. This version was older, ancient, from a time when our ancestors first settled there. "Look," I whispered, watching as figures moved through the ancient halls. "Those robes, they're like the ones our scholars wore." We saw them performing rituals, speaking of powers and beings beyond mortal comprehension. They spoke of Silas, of seals and sacrifices, of plans spanning centuries. "Our family," Tristan said, his voice tight. "They were part of this all along." Before we could learn more, the scene shifted. The window showed other times, other places, glimpses of history, both known and forgotten. I saw empires rise and fall in moments, watched as magic itself evolved and changed. We continued our journey, passing through spaces that I knew not the words in any language I knew to truly describe. In one area, the very ground was made of what I could only think of as compressed time, each step sending ripples through past and future. In another, we found a library where books wrote themselves, recording the stories of every soul that passed through the other side. "The veil is thinner here," a passing spirit informed us, an old woman whose form flickered between youth and age with each word. The living and dead brushed shoulders without knowing it. She was right. As we walked, I occasionally caught glimpses of the living world superimposed over this gray realm. I saw Nick again, his grief like a physical force that rippled through both realities. I saw Elijah, ever practical, making arrangements. And sometimes, just at the edge of perception, I caught glimpses of Val, though looking at him directly made my vision blur, as if his true nature couldn't quite be contained by either realm. We found ourselves in a vast chamber where spirits gathered to trade secrets and memories. Some offered glimpses of forgotten magic. Others promised knowledge of things yet to come. A few traded in darker currencies, fragments of souls, pieces of identity, moments of time stolen from the living. Don't make eye contact, Tristan warned as we passed through. The dead have their own economy, and we don't want to become part of it. The chamber opened onto a balcony overlooking what appeared to be an endless abyss. Far below, something massive moved in the darkness, a being so vast it made the void look small in comparison. The first sinner sleeps below, a spirit whispered as it drifted past us. His dreams shape reality itself. We had just turned away from the abyss when they appeared. The witches, their forms more solid than any spirit we'd yet encountered. Their leader smiled coldly as she stepped forward, and I knew our exploration of this realm was about to take a darker turn. The witches moved with predatory grace, their power making the gray air crackle with malevolent intent. The Martell siblings. Their leader's voice carried an echo of ancient magic. Such perfect vessels for our purpose. Your blood carries the echo of those who witnessed Silas's imprisonment. And now, her smile turned cruel. You carry the love of a Mikaelson in your heart. You know nothing of love. I spat, though my essence trembled at her words. Oh, but we do. Another witch laughed. We know how it can be twisted, corrupted, turned to our purpose. Your death will break Klaus's heart. His grief will make him vulnerable. And through you, she gestured to us both. We can strike at the demon who dares command death itself. The air grew heavier as their power built. I saw shapes forming in the mist around us, chains made of shadow and spite, meant to bind us to their will. But before they could complete their spell, something changed. The gray expanse shuddered. There's no other word for it. Reality itself seemed to hiccup like a record skipping. The endless abyss below us went silent, as if even the void held its breath. Then came the darkness, not simple absence of light. This was darkness as a living thing, a writhing mass of shadow shot through with veins of crimson. It moved like smoke, but felt ancient, hungry. The witch's spells flickered and died, snuffed out like candles in a hurricane. The darkness began to take shape, and my mind rebelled at what it was becoming. A dragon, yes, but that word feels inadequate. This was a being that wore the shape of a dragon, like a man might wear a coat. Something far more terrible, simply choosing a form we could understand. Thousands of eyes opened along its massive form, each one akin to a universe of darkness with crimson stars burning at their centers. They moved wrong, those eyes, each one seeing everything from every angle simultaneously. Looking into them felt like falling through endless mirrors, each reflection showing a different kind of darkness. The mark, I recognized, pulsed at its center, but this wasn't the simple crimson brand I'd seen on Vala's arm. This was its true form, a wound in reality itself, bleeding power into the realm of death. It beat like a heart made of dying stars, each pulse sending waves of power that made the other side tremble. Its wings, when they unfurled, weren't simple physical things at all. They were tears in the fabric of this existence, showing glimpses of places that hurt to look at. Realms where physics broke down, where the world ran backward, where realities themselves went to die. Mine, it spoke, and that single word contained multitudes. I heard Vala's voice, yes, but layered beneath there were other sounds, the death rattle of galaxies, the screams of dying gods, the laughter of things that lived in the spaces between moments. The witches tried to flee, but how do you run from something that seemingly encompasses all? The dragon's maw opened, revealing not teeth, but an infinity of endings, a throat lined with the death of possibilities. The crimson light that poured forth wasn't fire. It was anti-existence, the concept of cessation given form. The witches didn't die. They weren't destroyed. They simply stopped. Their very concept was erased, leaving nothing behind, not even memory. Then those impossible eyes turned to us, countless universes of darkness focusing on our trembling spirits. I felt my essence trying to flee, to hide, to cease existing rather than face this thing that wore my love's brother's name. Return, it commanded, and in that word I heard the inevitability of tides, the certainty of entropy, the promise of death itself. Your time is not yet done. The other side began to fade around us, reality reasserting itself like a wound healing backward. The last thing I saw was the dragon dissolving back into living darkness, its countless eyes closing one by one, each with them almost taking a piece of my sanity with it. As consciousness slipped away, I understood at last what true power looked like. Not the scholar's rituals, not the witch's spells, not even the might of the principal guardians glimpsed through that crack in reality. True power was this: a being so vast, it had to diminish itself just to interact with reality, wearing humanity like a mask to walk among lesser beings. The Prince of Darkness indeed. The last thought I had before darkness took me was a wonder. What must it cost him to cage such vastness in mere flesh and bone? What must it feel like to play at being human when you're anything? But then there was nothing but the peaceful slumber and the promise of return. A week had passed since the ritual, and Castle de Martel existed in a state of carefully maintained fiction. Through Vala's compulsion, the Count believed his children had been lost in a tragic riding accident, their bodies swept away by the river's cruel currents. Klaus hadn't left Tadia's chambers where the de Martel siblings' bodies lay, maintaining his vigil despite his siblings' attempts to draw him away. The confrontation with Valley had left him subdued, his rage giving way to hollow grief. But something was changing. The mark on Vala's arm pulsed steadily as he stood in the doorway, watching. The vampire blood in their veins still called to their souls, refusing to let them truly pass on. Yet they remained trapped, bound by the ritual's power until he had intervened. Aurora's body suddenly arched upward, a desperate gasp tearing from her lips. Beside her, Tristan's eyes snapped open, his own resurrection following moments after his sister's. Their eyes held a new depth, an ancient knowledge that hadn't been there before, the weight of having seen beyond the veil. Klaus moved with supernatural speed, gathering Aurora into his arms as she struggled to breathe. His joy at her return evident in every gesture, every touch, as if afraid she might disappear again. "You knew," Tadia observed softly, standing beside her husband. "That's why you wouldn't let them burn the bodies. You were waiting until you could reach them." Aurora's eyes found Valley, and there was something different in her gaze now, a profound reverence mixed with understanding. She saw him not as just Klaus's brother anymore, but as something far more ancient and terrible, something that chose to walk among them in human form. "We saw you," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Her hand reached out toward him before dropping, as if remembering that the being before her only wore the shape of a man. "Truly saw you." Tristan sat up slowly, his movements careful, as if relearning how to exist in physical form. His scholar's mind struggled to process what they'd witnessed, yet his eyes held the same reverence as his sister's when they fell upon Valley. "The vampire blood called to us," he explained, his voice soft with awe, "like an anchor to this world, but we couldn't return. The ritual's power held us bound until..." He paused, searching for words adequate to describe what had happened. "Until you came for us," Aurora finished. "Until you revealed yourself in your true glory." Klaus looked between them, confusion evident on his face. "What do you mean? What did you see?" Vala's expression darkened. "That's not something that needs to be discussed." "Why?" Tristan asked, his voice gentler than his usual scholarly precision would allow. "Because you fear we'll react as she did, like your mother when she first saw what you truly were." The mark flared crimson as the temperature in the room plummeted. Vala's black eyes fixed on Tristan with dangerous intent, but Aurora spoke before he could respond. We saw everything in the other side, she explained, her voice thick with emotion, including echoes of the past. A mother looking upon her newborn son and seeing not a child, but something that terrified her. She paused, her eyes meeting Vala's without flinching. But we're not her. What we witnessed, yes, it was beyond mortal comprehension, but it was magnificent. Aurora, Vala's voice carried a warning, but she continued, compelled by the need to speak truth. A dragon of living darkness, she described reverently. Each of your 1,000 eyes held universes within them. Your wings. She shuddered, but not in fear. They tore holes in reality itself. The mark at your center wasn't just a brand, but a wound in existence, bleeding power into the void. Klaus stared between them, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning understanding. Brother? They need to know, Tadia said softly, her hand finding Vala's. They've seen your true form. Let them speak it. Let them show you that not everyone will turn away in fear. The mark pulsed steadily as Valley remained silent, his eyes watching the DeMartell siblings with an unreadable expression. The weight of millennia seemed to press down on the chamber as they waited for his response. You saved us, Tristan said into the silence, his voice carrying the weight of witness. When those witches tried to bind us, to use us against your family, you revealed yourself. You didn't just destroy them. You erased them from existence itself. And now you fear we'll look at you as she did, Aurora added with gentle understanding, with horror instead of acceptance. But we're not her, Valley. What we saw was power beyond comprehension. Yes, but it was power wielded in protection, not malice. She reached for Klaus's hand, drawing strength from his presence. We saw what lies beneath your mask, and we choose not to turn away. Perhaps. She hesitated, then continued. Perhaps that's why you allowed us to remember. Because some part of you needed to know if anyone could see you truly and still choose to stay. The mark's pulsing slowed, its crimson light softening as something shifted in Vala's expression. For the first time since his mother had looked upon him with fear, someone had witnessed his true nature and chosen to embrace rather than flee from it. Vala's expression hardened, the brief vulnerability vanishing beneath a mask of cold indifference. The mark pulsed sharply as he stepped away from Tadia's touch. You delude yourselves, he said, his voice carrying an edge that made the air itself seem to recoil. Your understanding? Your reverence? Your acceptance? His laugh was hollow, devoid of warmth. You glimpsed something for mere moments and presumed to comprehend its nature. The temperature in the room dropped further as his black eyes swept over them. You think I desire your understanding? That I seek acceptance for what I am? Dark veins spread across his face as he smiled, the expression carrying nothing but contempt. That I allowed you to remember in seeking of your comfort? Don't kid yourselves. Love is worthless. The thought of needing someone else to fulfill me has never crossed my mind. Enough with your arrogance. Your attempts to humanize what you witnessed are nothing but self-comfort. Aurora's expression fell, while Tristan's scholarly certainty wavered. Even Klaus seemed to draw back instinctively at the darkness in his brother's voice. Keep your revelations to yourselves, Vala commanded, his voice carrying just enough of that terrible power they'd witnessed to make them shudder. Speak of what you don't understand again, and I'll show you exactly why Mother's fear was justified. He turned sharply, pausing only briefly at the doorway. You saw what I allowed you to see. Nothing more. Remember that before you presume to know anything about what I am. The mark pulsed one final time as he left, leaving behind a silence heavy with rejected understanding and the bitter taste of offered comfort spurned. The silence lingered after Vala's departure, heavy with unspoken words and rejected truths. Aurora watched Tadia carefully, noting how the other woman's hand had dropped slowly to her side after Vala's rejection of her touch. Something even in the past, before these days, saw happen many times when she dropped her mask of cruelty that she wore in his presence and let gentleness seep out. Doesn't it hurt? Aurora asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The way he denies needing anyone, even you? Tadia's smile was gentle, though tinged with something deeper than sadness. Sometimes, she admitted, moving to sit beside Aurora. Sometimes it hurts more than I can bear. Then why? Aurora hesitated, but Tadia understood the unspoken question. Because I love him, she said simply. I love him, and I wait for the day he truly opens himself to me. Her eyes grew distant, remembering. What first drew me to him was his darkness. That undeniable power that made others flee. But what kept me? She paused, her smile growing warmer. What kept me was his light. His light, Klaus asked, speaking for the first time since Vala's departure. What light could exist in such darkness? He loved his brother, but even he sometimes began to doubt whether it was worth it to love someone so deeply when they only reciprocated it with apparent apathy, coldness, and denial. The kind that even the evils of all creation could not truly extinguish, Tadia replied. It's there beneath the mark, beneath the power. A light that shows in how fiercely he protects what's his, and how deeply he loves despite his denials. She turned to Aurora and Tristan. You saw his true form, yes, but even that wasn't all of him. The dragon of darkness you witnessed? That's just one layer of what he is. Beneath it all, there's still my valley, still your brother, Klaus. Still the man who would tear reality apart to protect his family. The Mark's lingering chill in the room seemed to soften at her words, as if even in his absence, some part of Valley acknowledged this truth. The stone corridors of Castle de Martel echoed with Vala's measured steps as he walked away from the chamber, the Mark pulsing with barely contained emotion. Despite his dismissal of their words, memories he'd long buried began to surface. A child of 5 winters, standing in the doorway of their home, watching as his mother cradled baby Niklaus. Her smile was radiant, full of love as she cooed at his younger brother. But when her eyes met his, that smile vanished, replaced by something cold and fearful. Mother, he'd said, holding up a wooden figure he'd carved himself. I made this for you. Esther had taken it with trembling fingers, her touch careful, as if expecting the gift to bite. Thank you, Valley, she'd whispered, but her eyes never left the mark on his arm. The figurine had disappeared by nightfall. He'd later found its ashes in the hearth. Another memory surfaced. He was 7, returning from a successful hunt with father. His first kill, a deer he'd tracked himself. Pride had swelled in his chest as he'd run to show his mother. Look what I did, he'd exclaimed, expecting finally to see that warm smile directed at him. Instead, she'd backed away, muttering about the blood on his hands. Just like the mark, she'd whispered. Always blood with you. He hadn't understood then that the mark had guided his hunt, had made him more efficient, more lethal than a child should be. He'd only understood the rejection in her eyes. The mark pulsed harder as darker memories emerged. The accidents that began soon after. Poisoned meals he somehow survived, falls that should have killed him, illnesses that seemed to target only him. Each time he recovered, he'd seen the fear in her eyes grow deeper. Yet still he'd tried, year after year, desperate attempt after desperate attempt to earn just a fraction of the love she showed his siblings. He'd bring her flowers, they'd wilt at her touch. He'd try to help with her spells, the magic would twist wrong. He'd offer to assist with healing, and she'd send him away, claiming his presence tainted the remedies. The worst memory came unbidden. He was 12, had just saved Cole from drowning in the river. He'd fought the current, dragged his brother to shore, performed the compressions father had taught him. When Cole coughed up water and breathed again, he'd finally seen something like pride in his mother's eyes. For one shining moment, he'd thought things would change. That night, he'd overheard her in her workshop, speaking to spirits. Even his kindness is cruel, she'd whispered. He saves only to bind them closer, to make us love what should be destroyed, like a demon wearing the face of mercy. The mark flared crimson as Valley reached the castle battlements, the cool night air doing nothing to ease the burning in his chest. He'd been a fool then, a child desperate for love from someone incapable of giving it. Each attempt at earning her affection had only convinced her more of his inherent evil. Your attempts to humanize what you witnessed are nothing but self-comfort, he'd told the de Martels. But standing alone under the stars, the mark pulsing with ancient power, he wondered who he'd really been trying to convince. Behind him, Castle de Martel stood silent, holding secrets and memories both old and new. Somewhere within its walls, Taddeo waited, offering an acceptance he didn't dare trust. The de Martels lived again, having seen his true nature and chosen not to turn away. But the child who had once carved wooden figures for his mother's love was long dead. In his place stood something else, something that had learned that love was just another weapon to be used against you. The mark pulsed once more, as if in agreement, as Valis stared out into the darkness that had become his only constant companion. 3 months had passed since the de Martel's resurrection. While Castle de Martel settled into its new rhythm, other forces were stirring. Henrik sat in his chambers, candlelight flickering across the grimoire he'd been studying. The original vampire blood sealed within him, yet to be activated because of his youth, not desiring for him to be eternally a child, had changed him in unexpected ways, enhancing his natural magical abilities beyond what even Esther might have imagined. Where once he could barely light a candle, now power flowed through him like a river. But tonight was different. As he reached for his quill, a vision seized him with unexpected force. A woman with golden hair and eyes that held centuries of pain. She stood in a gray realm that shifted like smoke, watching scenes from their family's past play out before her. Henrik saw her weep as she witnessed Esther's cruelty toward their family, saw her smile in fierce satisfaction when Vala finally ended their mother's life. "Sister," Henrik whispered, though he'd never met her. "Freya." In the vision, she turned as if hearing him. "Little brother." Her voice echoed across the veil between worlds. "Find me. Time moves differently here in my cursed sleep, but I've seen everything. I've seen what Mother did to you all, what she tried to do." The vision began to fade, but her last words rang clear. "Tell Father I live. Tell Valley only he can cut the thread of slumber." Henrik gasped as he returned to himself, nearly knocking over his inkwell. Outside his chamber, he could hear Michael's voice. His father had returned from another fruitless search. 4 months now, Michael had been sending compelled scouts across the land, searching for any trace of Dahlia or the daughter stolen from him. Each failure only drove him to search harder, his determination fueled by Finn's revelation about Freya's fate. But now, Henrik had seen her, not in the physical world, but in that gray realm where she slumbered under Dahlia's spell. He'd felt her love for their family, her particular sympathy for Valley after witnessing his childhood through the other side's strange lens of time. He needed to tell them, all of them. Their sister lived, and she had seen everything. Henrik rushed through the castle's corridors, his heart pounding. He found Michael first, his father's imposing figure silhouetted against the evening sky as he questioned his latest returned scouts. "Father," Henrik called out, his voice trembling with excitement. "I saw her. I saw Freya." Michael turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" In a vision, Henrik explained, words tumbling out. "I saw her on the other side, watching us through time itself. She's alive, Father. She's under some kind of sleeping spell, but she's alive." Michael's hands gripped Henrik's shoulders, his voice urgent. "Tell me everything." As Henrik described his vision, other family members began to gather. Finn arrived first, drawn by the mention of their sister's name. Then Rebecca, Elijah, and Cole, followed by Klaus, who had finally begun emerging from his chambers now that Aurora had returned to life. "She said only Valley can cut the thread of slumber," Henrik finished, looking around at his gathered siblings. "Where is he?" "Here." Vala's voice came from the shadows, the mark pulsing steadily on his arm, though the thread of slumber. He paused, his black eyes distant with thought. "The first blade might be what she means." "The blade?" Michael questioned, still gripping Henrik's shoulders. "What does that have to do with freeing your sister?" "It can kill anything," Valley explained, the mark pulsing steadily, including, theoretically, magical bindings. "The problem," he paused, considering the implications, "is that its power isn't selective. If I attempt to sever Dahlia's spell, the blade's killing force might not discriminate between the magic and Freya herself. Then we cannot risk it," Finn stated firmly, but Valis shook his head. "Indeed," Valis said simply, surprising them all with the lack of hesitation in his voice. We'll find another way if this proves too dangerous. But first, we need to locate her physical form. Always the protector, Klaus remarked, his voice carrying a mix of admiration and lingering hurt from their recent confrontation. Feeling guilt over his lack of belief in his brother's intentions, hidden purposefully behind a mask of apathy or not. Family is family, Valley replied coldly. Nothing more needs to be said. The mark pulsed again as he turned to Henrik once more. Did she say anything else? Show you anything that might help us find where Dahlia keeps her? Henrik dejectedly shook his head. Then we continue the search, Michael declared, his voice carrying new hope. But now we know exactly what we're looking for. A sleeping woman, preserved by magic. No, that doesn't narrow it down enough. Valis stated as he turned silent, falling deep in thought, while the others became silent, as well, waiting for his next input. Cole, Valis said suddenly, his eyes gleaming with dark purpose. Mother's grimoire. Bring it. The one with the veil-piercing rituals. A slow smile spread across Cole's face as understanding dawned. Despite losing his ability to practice magic after their transformation, his mind remained sharp when it came to magical theory. And you'll get the Traveler's Grimoire we took from the scholars? The one with the soul-anchoring spells. Exactly. The mark pulsed steadily as Valley turned to the others. There might be a way to reach her before we find her physical form. Within moments, the brothers had spread both ancient texts on a heavy oak table, their fingers tracing complex magical formulae as they worked. The others watched in fascination. Though both were now vampires, Cole and Vala's deep understanding of magic remained undiminished. Where Finn had studied magic for power and Esther had wielded it with fear, these two had always approached it with genuine scholarly interest. Here, Cole pointed to a passage in Esther's grimoire, his excitement evident. A projection spell, meant to pierce the veil between worlds. Mother used it to commune with spirits, but with modifications. Combined with this, Valley added, indicating the traveler's text, his black eyes scanning the ancient symbols. A protection ritual that shields the soul during transit. The travelers used it to protect their essence during spirit walks. You mean to send someone to the other side? Elijah asked, comprehension dawning. Not just someone, Valley replied, his black eyes finding Michael. Father. He can speak to Freya directly, while I maintain a connection from this side, protecting him from whatever spirits might take offense to a living soul in their realm. The witches, Henrik whispered, remembering his vision. They're everywhere there. They won't dare approach, Valis stated coldly, the mark pulsing with dark promise. Not while I guard the passage. The mark's power will ensure that. Henrik will need to perform the actual spell, Cole added, already writing down the modified incantation, combining elements from both grimoires into something new. His enhanced magic makes him perfect for this. The vampire blood sealed within him has given him capabilities beyond what even Mother possessed. Henrik stepped forward, both excited and nervous. I can do it. I've seen her once already. I can find her again. The mark flared as Valley and Cole finished transcribing the hybrid spell, their combined knowledge creating something entirely new. A way for the living to walk among the dead, protected by the power of the mark. The brothers worked methodically, their knowledge of magic complementing each other as they refined the hybrid spell. Cole's scholarly precision balanced Vala's intuitive understanding of darker powers. The base will be Mother's projection spell, Cole explained, sketching magical symbols on parchment. But we'll need to modify the anchor point. Instead of just piercing the veil, we create a protected pathway, Vala finished, the mark pulsing as he added his own annotations. The traveler's soul-shielding ritual will form the outer layer, but strengthened by the mark's power. Michael watched intently as his sons worked. And this will allow me to reach her? More than reach her, Cole replied, not looking up from his work. You'll be able to walk the other side itself, protected from its denizens by Vala's power. But there are risks. The other side isn't meant for the living, Valley explained, his black eyes meeting Michael's. Even with my protection, you'll be vulnerable. Time moves differently there, and the dead aren't kind to intruders. I don't care about the risks, Michael stated firmly. She's my daughter. Henrik studied the complex spell taking shape before them. The incantation, it's in 3 parts? Yes, Cole confirmed. First, you'll open the veil using Mother Spell. Then, the Traveler's Protection Ritual, modified to work with Vala's power. Finally, he glanced at his brother. Vali will need to add his own element. The mark's power will form the final barrier, Vali explained, the crimson brand pulsing steadily between the dead and father's living soul. Vala's fingers traced the complex symbols they'd drawn, the mark pulsing in rhythm with each line. The connection needs to be absolute, he muttered, more to himself than the others. Any weakness in the barrier, and the spirits could slip through, Cole finished, understanding immediately. Not just the benign ones either. Everything in the other side would sense a living soul. How long will Father have? Elijah asked, studying the intricate spell work. As long as I can maintain the barrier, Vali replied, his black eyes distant with calculation. But the longer he stays, the more attention we'll draw. The other side has its own guardians, and they won't appreciate our interference. Guardians? Klaus questioned sharply. What aren't you telling us? The principal guardians, Cole explained, Vali having told only him about his meeting with Silas and what was shown. Cole being Vala's most trusted brother, and vice versa, this being so since the day he risked his life to save him from drowning. Heaven's warriors, they monitor the boundary between life and death. If they notice us piercing the veil, let them come, Vali stated coldly, the mark flaring. They're not the only ones who can claim divine authority. After all, he already did once enter the other side, and they were too cowardly to even show a hint of themselves before him. Henrik looked between his brothers, absorbing the complex magic they were creating. The incantation needs to be precise, he said. One mistake could trap Father on the other side, Cole confirmed. Or worse, leave him vulnerable to whatever lurks there. Then we do this right, Vala declared, the mark pulsing with finality. Henrik, copy these exactly as we've written them. Father, he turned to Michael, you'll need to be prepared for what you might see there. The other side shows truth in its rawest form. The ritual will need certain elements, Cole said, consulting both grimoires. Blood from those with connections to both sides. Henrik, who saw her in his vision, and Vali, whose mark bridges the gap between life and death. Salt from the Dead Sea, Vali added, reaching into his collection of magical components. Black candles infused with grave dirt. And, he paused, his black eyes finding Michael, something of Freya's. Something that carries her essence. Michael's hand went to a small pouch at his belt, one he'd carried for decades. Her first tooth, he said quietly. I kept it, even after. The mark pulsed as Val nodded. That will do. The connection to her physical form will help guide you through the gray realm. As they began arranging the components in a precise pattern, Cole continued explaining to Henrik. The candles form the barrier's foundation. The salt creates the circle of protection. Your blood and Vala's will mix at cardinal points, creating anchors for the spell. And Father stands in the center, Henrik concluded, studying the diagram they'd drawn. Yes, Vala confirmed, the mark pulsing steadily. But remember, once the spell begins, you cannot break concentration. No matter what you see, no matter what happens, you must maintain the flow of power. What do you mean, no matter what happens? I thought you already said you'd be able to protect them. Klaus demanded. I can and I will. Stop with your continued doubt of me, Niklaus. Vala snapped, annoyed at his constant interruptions. Forgive Nick, Vali, but do please explain this part. Rebecca requested. Vala sighed. Besides the Guardians, it is possible that the other side itself, the dimension, will resist, Vali explained coldly. It doesn't like invaders and those who take from it. The witches may not dare, but they are, as earlier told, not the only things that lurk there. It may therefore send the other dead to try and break through into here, temporarily, to disrupt the spell. That's where I come in. And what of Dahlia? Finn asked suddenly. If she's as powerful as Mother claimed, won't she sense us reaching for Freya? Most likely, Cole answered, glancing at Vali. But that might work to our advantage. If she reacts, she might reveal where she keeps Freya's physical form. Vala finished, the mark pulsing steadily. But first, we need to establish the connection. They began arranging the ritual components in a precise circle. Black candles at 8 points, their flames burning with an unnatural stillness. The Dead Sea salt formed intricate patterns between them, and at the cardinal points, small bowls waited for the blood offerings. "Henrik," Valley instructed, "you'll stand here at the northern point. Father will be in the center with Freya's tooth. Cole and I will monitor the spell stability while maintaining the protective barriers. And the rest of us?" Klaus asked. "Guard the perimeter," Valley commanded. "If anything tries to break through, anything at all, destroy it immediately. They'll be vulnerable to physical attacks by entering into the living plane. Do so with your utmost best, for we can't risk the spell being interrupted once it begins. If it does, we not only will possibly lose our sister, but we'll lose our father as well." I don't think I can do this," Henrik suddenly states, as the full scope of the risks dawn on him. Henrik's sudden doubt hung in the charged air, the weight of the task before him pressing down like a physical force. The room fell silent, each other's siblings save Valley, processing the gravity of what they were about to attempt. "You can, Henrik," Michael reassured, his voice steady and filled with paternal authority. "You've seen her already. You know the way." Henrik swallowed hard, looking around at his siblings, each ready to play their part. "What if I make a mistake? What if I can't keep the connection?" "You won't be alone," Valley interjected, his voice carrying the assurance of one who had faced death and darkness and emerged unscathed. "The mark will help guide you, and I'll be here to support the barrier. Trust in your magic and in us." Rebecca moved to Henrik's side, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We've faced worse odds before, little brother. You're stronger than you know." Cole, ever the scholar, added with a hint of mischief, "And if anything goes wrong, you can blame Valley. He's the one with the grand plans, after all." A faint smile tugged at Henrik's lips, bolstered by their encouragement. He returned to his position at the northern point of the circle, taking a deep breath as he prepared to begin the incantation. "Once we begin," Valley warned, addressing their father, his black eyes reflecting the candlelight, "there can be no interruption. Henrik will channel the power. I'll maintain the barrier, and Father." He paused, meeting Michael's determined gaze. "You must focus only on finding Freya. Don't let anything distract you." "What should I expect?" Michael asked, stepping into the circle's center. "The other side will try to disorient you," Cole explained. "You'll see things, memories, spirits, fragments of what was and what could be. Focus on Freya's essence. The tooth will guide you to her." Henrik took his position at the northern point, the combined grimoire open before him. His hands trembled slightly as he began the first incantation, his enhanced magic responding to the ancient words. The candle's flames suddenly shot upward, and the salt patterns began to glow with an eerie blue light. The mark on Vala's arm pulsed crimson as he added his power to the spell, creating a barrier between worlds. As Henrik's voice filled the chamber with ancient words, the veil between worlds began to thin. The mark on Vala's arm blazed crimson, its power radiating outward to form a protective dome around them all. "Sanguis Vitae, Sanguis Mortis," Henrik chanted, his voice carrying power that surprised even himself. The mixed blood at the cardinal points began to move, forming intricate patterns in the air. Michael stood perfectly still in the center, Freya's tooth clutched in his hand. The surrounding air started to shimmer, reality warping like heat waves over desert sand. "It's beginning," Cole warned, his eyes fixed on the magical barriers taking shape. "Father, remember, follow the connection. Don't let anything else draw your attention." The chamber's temperature plummeted as the other side's presence grew stronger. Shadows deepened in the corners, taking shapes that seemed almost alive. Outside the circle, Klaus, Elijah, Rebecca, and Finn tensed, ready to defend against any intrusion. "Henrik," Vala's voice carried over the building supernatural energy, the final incantation. "Now." As Henrik began the last part of the spell, Vala's eyes turned completely black, the mark's power flowing through him like a river of darkness. The barrier between worlds thinned further, and Michael's form began to fade. The crossing had begun.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.